Everybody, welcome to the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors meeting this day, Tuesday, September 12th, 2017. We're just returning from closed session. I'd like to open our regular session, which starts at 10 o'clock, with a quick moment of reflection. Supervisor Gitlin, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Introduction of new employees. Jay, is there anybody today? Oh, we've got one. Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Wow, everybody?
So this is just a build-up
Okay.
since being gone. So there was a recent hire when I came on.
Can you come to the microphone, please?
So there was a recent add-on. We've done some hiring since moving into the position. So moving left to right, I have Mary. Mary is one of
Hey,
our
Mary.
legal clerks. Then Treasurer Cox, Bailey, and Matthew. All of them have a very broad range of experience, and they are great to the team, and we are really proud to have them here.
Sweet. Welcome aboard. You guys want to say anything just for posterity?
Hi.
Okay? I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Elizabeth, anything to report from closed session?
Yes, in the case Devani Elmore versus Rite of Passage et al., CVPT 171160, the board voted 5-0 with a motion by Supervisor Berkowitz and a second by Supervisor Gitlin to defend that case.
Thank you very much. All right. At this time, I'd like to request any deletions, corrections, or additions from the board members for the agenda at this time. Seeing none, we'll move forward. All right. Let's go ahead and take up the consent agenda, items 6 through 16.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull item number 7 for discussion.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to pull item number 7 for discussion. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and open the consent agenda minus item number 7 for public discussion. Please. Good morning.
I'm sorry, I'm Linda, 5th District, and good morning.
Good morning.
On item number 14, you're approving for a resolution for the emergency, and I think that's great. I'm not really, I haven't looked into, I haven't done my homework on what resolutions are for, if they're for leading up to ask for money for emergency services, but I'm just kind of concerned, and this probably has nothing to do with anything, but, you know, on September 1st, excuse me, there were over 378 particles in the filled air in our county. And our varsity team was playing football in that, and I think that's atrocious. They gave out medical masks for the spectators, but obviously not for the football players. So I don't know. I don't understand what's going on here. Where was OES then? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any further public discussion? On the consent agenda only? We pulled item number 7. for
You
discussion.
pulled item number 7?
Yes, we
Thank
did.
you.
You're welcome. Okay. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, can you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right, and we're just in time for our public comment period. members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you are addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until the board takes up that matter. Please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Please. And please state your name for the record.
My name is Craig Swanson. I've lived in Denmark County in Crescent City for 17 years. I'm 67 years old. Currently, I work as an IHSS worker, in-homes support service person, and the Board of Supervisors will be deciding on the contract for the union for the people who do this in this county. There are about 380 service providers in Denmark County. I currently take care of 3 full-time. I work 7 days a week, 60 hours a week. I'm paid minimum wage. There are no benefits other than that. The people I take care of are a hair away from being in a nursing home. If I wasn't there to take care of them, they would have to be in a nursing home. That's what the whole program is about, and I'm sure you understand that. If I didn't work, my wife and I would be homeless because we just have Social Security, and my wife has been disabled with brain damage for 30 years. So, being 67, I'm forced to work. I love the work I do. I love the people I take care of, but I really enjoy a day off or a paid vacation, sick days, or holiday pay. None of that's available to me or my co-workers. And I just wanted the public to be aware of our existence and the kind of thing we do for your community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. I'd like to take up our budget transfers at this time, which item number 17 and 18, which is budget transfer number 8-12 in the amount of $252,000.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Did we close public session? Did I miss that? Or is there anyone else who?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I must have missed that.
we've closed public
I
comment.
thought there was someone who wanted to speak, and very good. Thank you, sir.
Approved budget transfer 08-12 in the amount of $252,000, and also budget transfer 08-13 in the amount of $252,000. I'd like to open it up for public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. What is the board's will?
Move for approval.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Kylie, can you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Henningsen?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right, let's go ahead and take up item number 7, which is pulled from the consent agenda. Supervisor Gitlin.
Yes, I did pull that. I'm actually asking and requesting, I'll make a motion to table this particular measure for the public appointment. There's a lot going on at Border Coast Regional, or BICRA, and there are a lot of things and dynamics that are going on with Penn Air. As you all are aware, Penn Air has pulled out of other EAS contracts in the Midwest, and they've lost a number of pilots. I'd like to wait for the dust to settle, if we can, Mr. Chairman, and I'll ask to table that for at least a 30-day period, and then bring it up again in November, in October.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Public comment.
Donna Westfall, I live in District 1, and I agree with Supervisor Gitlin that this should be tabled at least for a month. My comments have to do with appointing David Finnegan, who I term spending $2.8 million on a new airport terminal as Finnegan's Folly. So we would point somebody who's already, in my opinion, wasted taxpayer money to a board that oversees things like spending taxpayer money. So please consider tabling this discussion as we see what happens with Penn Air, as we see what happens with EAS, Essential Air Services, and perhaps even consider that the BCRAA is obsolete and should be disbanded, but time will tell. Please consider tabling this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public comment. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. What is the board's will? Supervisor Berkowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm more concerned with the wider situation of why we have BICRA in the first place. When it was originally formulated, we were to have partners that contributed to phase 2, at least, of the terminal. As far as I know, Del Norte County is the only contributor to phase 2 of this terminal. And going forward, it means that BICRA can overrule Del Norte County in decisions that we make. And I'm concerned that with no buy-in from BICRA, that we're left, of course, holding the bag. I would like to have a wider discussion of why we even need BICRA in the first place, considering they don't contribute any money to this project.
Thank you. Other discussion from the board? Okay, do we have a motion then on the table?
I did make that motion.
Second.
Motion to table.
Motion to table.
Second.
Second on the motion to table. Is there an alternative motion?
Yeah, I would move that we approve David Finnegan as the public member for the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority, as requested by the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, a second. We'll take the second motion first. Kylie, please poll the vote.
Supervisor Gitlin?
No.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
No.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Yes, we did. No worries. All right, let's go ahead and move to our first agenda item, which would be agenda item number 19, which is approve and authorize the chair to sign and send a joint letter of support with the City of Crescent City for Humboldt State University's purchase of Radio Bilingua, as requested by Chair Howard. I had an opportunity, as invited to Humboldt State University, to meet with President Lisa Rossbacher. It was an excellent meeting, and I think one that was long overdue in the history of communication here within our community, not only Del Norte County, but also Humboldt County. Humboldt State University has been presented with a unique opportunity through some funding avenues to purchase a radio station that would broadcast in Spanish. Something we've sorely lacked around here for decades and decades and decades as a communication tool, believe it or not. Humboldt State University's interest and promise at that time is that they would pursue if support was there. And the City of Crescent City last week took steps to make that happen on their end unanimously to get that support out there. It was great to see. It's on our desk now to consider. I'd like to hear from the board, and I'd also like to hear from the public on supporting, through a letter of support, specifically to the president of HSU, the county support to provide communication through Radio Bilingua to Del Norte County, which would be our first Spanish radio station in the community ever. I'd like to open it up for public comment. Good morning. Please state your name for the record.
Good morning, Board. My name is Terry Sapahan. I'm Director for the True North Organizing Network, and I can vouch for what Chairman Howard just said about the meeting with Lisa Rossbacher and members of the community, both from Del Norte and Humboldt. And I'd also like to say that Chairman Howard can attest to this. It's one of the few times in my experience in community development, community organizing, that when the president and her staff and the director of KHSU were talking specifically about places to site the tower and the service, the radio service to be expected, There were going to be pluses and minuses as in any engineering question, but at least the group that was assembled there, I was pleased and proud to say that they said our priority and True North's priority was we would prefer to see Del Norte served before just putting in the best service in Humboldt and for Humboldt, because we were afraid that if, and we've all seen that play out in the long haul, that if you put in something for the majority of people, it's a long road to sometimes get something for the rest of us. And I think they heard us in the delegation and the contingent that Mike Thornton put together for all the people that came down from Del Norte to speak on behalf of Del Norte, working with the whole region. I was pretty impressed and proud of, and I hope you folks will consider supporting that letter of support.
Thank you very much. Public comment. Okay, seeing, oh. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I'm Patricia Black, a county resident. So this is such a great idea. I don't know if I even have to speak on behalf of it, but I just wanted to throw out some things that you've probably already thought of about all the benefits of having a Spanish language station here in Del Norte and bringing the community closer together and more informed. So for example, recent catastrophes we know about, Texas, Florida, smoke in Del Norte County, getting that information out. Where are the masks available? Is it safe to go outside? Are the children going to go to school? That's all going to be out there. And in the preparation for catastrophes, you know, the little public service announcements that we get in English all the time, that'll be available in Spanish. Bringing the parents and the schools closer together. Oh, we're having an early out. Oh, there's a lockdown at this school. Whatever, it'll be available in Spanish. For law enforcement, if they want to say, you know, stay off the street, there's a good reason for that. For public health issues, bringing up the nurse-family partnership when the immunizations are going, have your well water checked. And then, as a retired Spanish teacher, I want to say it's a wonderful opportunity for kids that are taking Spanish or adults to get to listen to the rhythms of the music and the speaking, and for people who just enjoy listening in Spanish. So I hope you'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. Supervisor Berkowitz.
Mr. Chairman, although I support this measure, I'd just like to set the record straight. We have had a Spanish station here before from broadcasting on 1310 AM radio, KFVR. It, I think, was in effect from 1995 until it went bankrupt in 2005.
It's good to know. Wasn't aware of that. Okay. Do we have a motion on the table?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to instruct the chairman to sign and send a joint letter of support with the City of Humboldt for Humboldt State University to purchase radio bilingüe as requested by you.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And it's with the City of Crescent City. Thank you. No worries. Yeah, I saw that earlier. It's okay.
Let me correct that, because I was thinking it was the County of Humboldt and then Humboldt State, so thank you for making a correction. It is the City of Crescent City.
Thank you. Motion is corrected. Supervisor, is that good with you? Yep, thank you. Kylie, can you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right. It is definitely time for our 10:15 timed agenda item, which is to open the public hearing to consider the recommended budget and all submitted special district budgets for the 2017-18 fiscal year and continue the hearing for 14 days. Consider and adopt the annual children's budget as presented and review and discuss the information provided by the Community Development Department staff relating to the implementation of a revolving fund for code enforcement program as requested by the county administrative officer. And I think it'd be wise, because there's another piece of this that we do need to consider today, which is item number 26, Could we roll that into this discussion of the budget?
I think you'd need to open that up and also have it, comment
Okay.
on it, but you can do those
Simultaneously?
simultaneously.
I think
You
it'd
can you open this one and then have that discussion at a later part of this discussion.
Very good. Then I'd also like to go ahead and open that discussion at this time for item number 26, which is review and discuss the information provided by the Community Development Department staff regarding a request to add as a priority for fiscal year 17-18 to fund up to $100,000 for maintenance of non-county maintained roads. Okay, I'd like to open it up for public comment on those two items. Great, seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. Board, what's your pleasure? Like to hear
Mr.
from
Chairman,
staff first?
for the last several meetings, 3 items have been requested by board members and brought to the attention of this board. The first is a request by the Klamath Chamber of Commerce for a contribution of $40,000 from our budget to promote and increase tourism in the southern part of the county. Second was a request to increase code enforcement budget so that the county could lien delinquent properties and enforce code violations that would result in a cleaner county. And third was to provide funding for emergency maintenance of non-county maintained roads. So, Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to propose that those items be funded in next year's budget and be prioritized not to exceed number 5 in the list of prioritized budget items.
Excellent, thank you. And that's in the form of a motion, Supervisor?
Yes, it is.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on that. Discussion from the board. And I'd also like to have some input from Community Development Department, as I believe they are prepared to have some discussion on item 26 at this time, and potentially some of the non-maintained roads at this time. Please.
Good morning. We were asked at the last meeting
We'll get to code enforcement in a minute.
yeah, Dominic, you'll get your turn, believe me.
Don't be so excited over there.
We were asked to put together a list of non-county maintained roads that would qualify for the $20,000 per district that Supervisor Berkowitz brought up, which item 26 is a list of those, which hopefully you've all had a chance to look at. I think one surprise that I had from putting the list together was the fact that District 1 didn't have any. They have private roads, and they have potentially county maintained roads that may not be to a level acceptable to some constituents, but there are no non-county maintained roads. I guess from our perspective, if this were to be funded, our road division is certainly available to be able to complete the work. We would need to have some type of a process in order to determine priorities, et cetera, which I would hope would come from the supervisors for each district, because I'm sure there would be a great interest with constituents as far as how those monies are spent.
The list was pretty much centralized to one district, though
Yes.
based,
It was
which was a little bit
overwhelming.
of a surprise to me, because I
It's in
thought
here.
District 3 would have had
Yeah.
the highest number of these, given
No.
the geography of District 3, but it wasn't.
No, it was
It was-
overwhelming District 5. And as I said in the board report, if I were to continue going through the effort of trying to identify those roads, I feel like more of them would be in District 5. It's just a lot of not accepted public roads.
So let me just ask a question here. Considering there's so many in District 5 and so few in the other districts, that determination of $20,000 for each district would go a lot further in the other districts than it would in District 5. Isn't that correct?
Oh, certainly, I think that, well, I'm Supervisor Gitlin, he wouldn't have anywhere to spend his $20,000, and District 3 with Supervisor Howard, it was primarily the Rock Creek subdivision, and
very
Yeah.
short spurs. Supervisor Gitlin.
Well, Heidi, first of all, thank you for that breath of fresh air and cold water on my face, District 1. But we've got a problem. This county has a problem in ingressing and egressing many of the roads where people live. I use the example, Heidi, with you, the Birchall Place, which has probably 20 houses on them. I've come to learn it's not a county road. It's a private road. Yet there's a speed limit on there, and it's perceived to be 15 miles per hour. You can't drive on the road. There's potholes everywhere. What about these people? They can't get them, this poor neighborhood, they can't get themselves together. How do we fix their road? And in fact, the roads department fixed that road once, perhaps in error, but set the precedent and spoiled these people to have an expectation that a road like this would be maintained in at least a minimum drivable standard. How do they deliver their mail? How does FedEx go in and make a delivery? How do people drive their vehicles without getting their wheel alignment every 2 to 3 months? I mean, it's a problem. So I think that we have to have a different model for how we identify roads in need where people live in Del Norte County. And I'm not quite sure if this is the right place or the right time to do it. I'd like to have some kind of a modest budget so that we elected people up here can answer the calls of people who come to us and say, help us, we can't figure this out. Someone says they won't give us, they won't pay for this part of the road because they don't drive on it, so the guy deep in the cul-de-sac, he can barely get to his house. So I think the actual method in which we address this should not be set up just on non-Mount County maintained roads, but we have to have a different model. So where people live, we have to, if they can't solve the problem in a satisfactory manner, then government, which is we have to help them solve this problem. So I'm in support of Supervisor Berkowitz's motion. I know we have a time frame. I'd like to have some monies put aside to see how we address some of these problems throughout our system, our county, so that we can help people and not kick this can down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Cowan.
I agree with taking care of the county roads. I think it was brought up, though, 20,000. I'm not okay with that separating. I think there just should be some type of a budget and a systematic way of going about this. I mean, it looks like you've started, you've identified. There was more in my district than I thought. I, again, thought they would be out, but some of them I was aware of because I have had constituents reach out to me regarding them. So I agree with that. On the motion itself, though, there's 3 items that I'm not sure I'm comfortable with all 3 going together. So I'd like to kind of separate that out somehow, Supervisor Berkowitz.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be willing to separate those out and deal with this one first. And if somebody wanted to make an alternative motion that would lower the amount, not necessarily $100,000, but something less, I'd be willing to listen to that.
Yeah, I don't have an alternative motion, but I think this motion doesn't make a lot of sense when there is such a difference between each district in the amount of roads that they have that are non-county maintained. So it really doesn't make much sense for supervisor or the District 1 supervisor to have $20,000 and no place to spend it. It makes absolutely no sense. And the other side of this is where are you going to take this money from then? How are we going to balance this out?
Well, first of all, I said that, you know, if you want to make an alternative motion, basically, that would say have something less. If you want to say, well, there's more in District 5 than there is in, let's say, District 1, and you want to prorate it or do some other combination, I'm willing to listen to that. But what I'm not willing to go along with is no money at all for non-county maintained roads, because we're doing our county a disservice. They expect to be able to have roads that they can travel on. They expect to have roads that are not underwater in the wintertime. They expect to be able to have mail service, which is non-existent when the mail vehicle is underwater. We need to be able to do something about that, and we can do that here today.
Heidi, can Heidi come back up?
Well, let me just weigh in here just for a second. I don't think anybody's arguing, Bob, that this wouldn't be a priority if financially our general fund potentially could support the county roads department to pick up some of these additional roads that just happen to fall into your district. I don't think that's the discussion at all. It's whether or not we could afford it at this time, and that's why we're including this specific discussion as part of the overall public hearing on the budget. I started talking about this with folks because, as Supervisor Hemmings and I indicated during the last meeting, we weren't specifically clear about this being for county roads. And we're not the only community or county to wrestle with this issue. So looking to our southern neighbors, they wrestled with this issue some time ago also. And I'm not sure if you're aware of it, and maybe Ms. Kunstl could enlighten us just in case, and hopefully you're aware of this. But I talked to Ward Stover about this last week, and Ward brought up that there's a special assessment district for these areas, specifically for these county non-maintained roads. Maybe this is a model that could work for these neighborhoods, maybe it's not, but I'd certainly be willing to entertain that idea as a mechanism outside of the general fund budget in order to focus some attention on these areas of need. Heidi, I'm not sure how familiar you are with what Humboldt County does, but if you are, could you let us know what you know?
I'm not exactly sure with what they've done, but we have actually done that in the past. I believe Downing Street, it was many years ago, they formed an assessment district in which they collected funds in order to bring the road up to a county maintained standard, which it was then accepted by the Board of Supervisors. Also, I would say within the last 10 years, I believe that the Community Development Department was directed to solicit comments from several neighborhoods about doing this same thing. One, I believe it was probably in Supervisor Hemmingson's district. We ended up not getting a lot of feedback back from the neighborhoods, but it is something that we have brought up with Supervisor Berkowitz. I think one of the concerns, which I understand, is that some of these areas, they don't have the funds even collectively to be able to do this, but for some neighborhoods it may be a great opportunity. Sure. And it's something that we could certainly look into and help facilitate if that's the case.
So the county could help facilitate those discussions?
I believe so, and I believe that County Council has also done some research into this as well. So
Supervisor Berkowitz, what's one of the, if you were to think about these discussions you've had specifically in your district, what is one of the roads that you would call out as the highest priority?
Probably either Darby or Dodane, but I've had people call me from Darby saying, gee, we'd love to have mail service. This is in the winter. Of course, they can't, the carrier can't even get in because the road is underwater. I think I've taken some pictures and shown it to people.
Sure.
It's amazing that these roads are underwater and people expect, it's a county road, they expect to be able to get to their homes.
Superintendent Daniels, I hate to put you on the spot, but since you're in the audience, can you approach the dais and maybe weigh in on this, on what potentially a cost associated with Darby, for instance? Are you familiar with that road?
It's a non-county maintained road. I don't look at it. So, I mean, we can look at it, we can give a cost, but it's roads we don't deal with, so, and to ask me for a cost, that would be unfair, because
you haven't looked at it.
All of those roads are a little bit different, and the drainages are probably the biggest problem, so.
Is there a way, because I'm just thinking impact to general fund here. Obviously, some of the discussion around this request, it could potentially, $100,000, if that was the request, could potentially be eaten up very quickly with a road improvement project. I'd like to know the cost around one of the largest priority roads, if Darby is the one, what a potential road improvement project might look like specific to that district. Could you get that for us in 2 weeks?
Yeah, we can get that in 2 weeks. Pick a road. Pick a road, we can go look at it. Well, we can give you a call.
I'll let you have that discussion with Supervisor Berkowitz Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yeah, as Director Kunstler was alluding to earlier, we were mainly dealing with private roads that have the same issue. You can't get garbage service, you can't get the emergency services out there, you can't, you know, the mail doesn't want to be delivered. And so we looked into, the Humboldt County was one that we looked at on how they formed these districts. So we sent out, I don't know how many postcards. I mean, it was a pretty simple process, and really didn't get, we just didn't get anything back. And so there wasn't enough people that would, that wanted to fix the roads. And so then they expect the county to jump in, and some of these things are relatively expensive. They usually know going in, or they should know going in, whether the road is private or county maintained or not maintained, and not trying to make excuses. I'd love for all the roads in Del Mar County to be passable, and they should be. There is a little bit of responsibility on the property owner, but in a lot of cases, the property owners just don't have that kind of money. And if we could come up with a plan that would work. I don't have one. I looked at it for a number of years and spent a lot of time with the county engineer trying to figure a way to do it, and could not come up with anything that was equitable.
Supervisor Berkowitz.
Of course, Supervisor Hemmingson is talking about private roads, and this has absolutely nothing to do with private roads. We're talking about county non-maintained roads, and that's a whole different breed of cat.
Correct.
Mr. Supervisor. You know, I'm hearing a couple of different conversations here. Number one, and on a very valid question from Supervisor Hemmingson, where are you going to get the money from? And I think that's part of the overall discussion of the 1015 item. Where is any money going to come from to support any kind of improvements to improve the quality of life for you folks sitting out here in the audience? That's a good question, and I've gone painstakingly through the budget, and I want to commend CEO Serena for balancing this $126,372,123 budget, of which $26,554,631 is Del Norte County money. It's the general fund. But as long as we're having this discussion, and I have identified some areas that there is some money in, and I'd like CEO Serena to identify these areas, and there is some money to work with. Line item, if I can just refer to this, it's the BICRA loan for $96,352. That's the one where the county is paying itself back. Line item 70920. Is there an obligation on our part to even address that loan at this time?
There is a loan obligation, yes. The Board of Supervisors signed that, and there is an annual payment required by the Border Coast Airport Authority. They have, I believe, 60 days prior to that date, which is June 30th, to tell us whether or not they have the ability to pay it. If they don't, then the county then becomes the payee back to the general fund. But there is a loan obligation. It's a promissory note is what it is.
And could this board take alternative action to amend that?
It would be a separate action,
Okay.
yeah. It wouldn't be necessarily a budget action, but a completely separate item at that point.
And I'm asking this question because $96,000 to Del Norte County is a lot of money. And essentially, we're paying ourselves back where it actually doesn't go to any use to improve the quality of life for folks that are in our county, other than it pays this $2.7, I think, million loan that we forwarded for the airport terminal. So that is something that we could address in a separate action. There are a number of other items on there that I brought note on. I looked at the one we recently took a vote on, which was the professional services, our lobbyists. I thought the contract was for $60,000, $5,000 per month, yet it says $72,000. Line item 20232. My understanding when we voted was 12 months times $5,000 is $60,000. Is that correct, Jay?
It also includes Peterson. It's now Sean Yoder, which is at the state level.
Okay. Okay, so that includes all professional services, not just Washington.
It's state and federal.
There is some additional $5,000. It doesn't appear, I was looking at it get my notes out as I'm looking at it here. Under Board of Supervisors budget, travel and training, we allocate $35,000. Let's go back to the 2015-16 budget. We only spent just under $25,000. Why can't that be amended down to a lower figure of $25,000? That's $10,000 right there. There are a number of employee recognition. $5,000 is allocated each year. It doesn't appear to be, according to the budgets that I'm looking at, line item number 20280, it doesn't appear that those monies are being deployed anywhere near the allocated funding. These are the kinds of things that I would like to draw attention to. Here's another one under administration. Travel and training. I'm going back to the 2014-15 budgets where we have allocated $4,000, spent $3,800, allocated $4,000, spent $2,400. That's in 2015-16. Here we are, we've allocated $5,000. Why can't that be saved? And we can amend that down to $4,000. That's line item number 20290. I've noted a couple of them where I felt there was some flexibility. Do you see, Jay, there's any opportunity to look at these items and perhaps sharpen the pencil to find some monies? In my total amount I found $134,000, of which we could spend about $75,000 on some of these items that can be addressed, and it wouldn't impact our general fund. Now, these are not in any departments that are functioning on lean budgets. They are basically in miscellaneous and administration, Board of Supervisors budgets, where maybe we can tighten our belt a little bit so that the folks in Del Norte County can derive a benefit from that. I'm willing to make that sacrifice in our department at the Board of Supervisors, and by doing that, we help folks, and that's ultimately what our goal. Do you see the opportunity, and I bring these to your attention, these line item issues here, Jay, that we could sharpen the pencil and find some money?
The Board of Supervisors has the final say on any of those line items, and as far as effect on the general fund, they're all general fund lines. The Border Coast Airport Authority, like I mentioned, that's an obligated loan. The board could make a choice at a separate hearing or meeting. As far as the lobbyists, those are dedicated as part of contracts. Travel and training for the Board of Supervisors, that is a decision of the board. That's projecting additional training and related to some of the committees that some of our supervisors are on now. The increase in regards to the 25 is related to the additional training, and it's simply a projection, but if the board chooses to restrict itself, they could do that. The employee recognition, we have been hoping to have a situation where we can recognize our employees again. We have cut that out in previous years in regards to budget issues. We still would like to try that. That number is, again, at the discretion of the board. As far as travel training and administration, sure, you could cut that out. It would restrict any of the employees in administration from traveling. Now, last year I didn't travel much because I had obligations here, but that includes also all of the divisions of administration. So the answer is that any line in there inside the general fund, the board has authority over. That's the executive decision of the board for appropriation. If the board chooses to cut that, that's your choice. I would certainly have recommendations on those. I already do. That's why the budget is what it is. It's based on previous costs associated with the work of the board, the work of the employees, the services rendered. So, you know, as far as those, yeah, there's the ability to reduce those. There are ramifications that come with it.
I'd just like to respond to that, and I appreciate your candor in letting us know. Mr. Chairman, would you entertain a possibility of having a special meeting on some of these items that can be addressed separately for the benefit of our county, those items that I've mentioned. Would you entertain a special meeting next week before we have to go into final?
Yeah, we've got 2 weeks before we close public hearing. We'd have to do that within that 2-week period. Is that correct, Jay?
Correct. You have 14 days until you close the public hearing, and then a decision would have to be made by October 2nd.
Yeah, there's a broader underlying discussion, and some of the things that Supervisor Gitlin has basically said, some make sense, some don't. And, you know, looking back through history, I've been here long enough to see how things have flown out of this county and the downturns that we've taken and the upswings we've taken and where our economy is going. But it's very clear, based on our history, that recovering from a downturn in the timber industry and recovering from a downturn in the fishing industry has been extremely tough, where we're now relying upon a huge piece of tourism and a huge piece of agriculture to support our remaining endeavors here with our general fund monies. And to that extent, we've experienced a great deal of frustration funding things that we've become used to within our general fund, more specifically around public safety, which every one of us sees a huge need to address public safety concerns here within our county. There's no question about it. I hear it from every supervisor, and I hear it from every constituent in our districts. It is a massive priority, one we all wish we could fund, and we're looking outside the box in order to make that happen. I know our sheriff has really been diligent about working outside the box to do these things. And there's probably going to need to be steps in order for us to look long-term at solutions that might even involve the community considering an increased sales tax potentially, which are hard discussions, following a similar line to what Humboldt County did. But if we want to address public safety issues, if we want to make this a tourism community where people and visitors are safe or feel safe when they come here, these are questions that we have to ask and our community are going to have to answer at some point in time. I'm not sure how that folds out, but I do know that the commitments of folks here in the last decade has focused around very specific items towards economic development. Has199.com. It's focused around our harbor, it's focused around our airport, it's focused around the city's sewer system, it's focused on 199, and it's focused on broadband. Specifically around the airport, this board had made commitments to that airport very specifically because of the FAA and the direction the FAA gave us. Leveraging funds, which the county has done, specifically with our funds in a specific account that we could use for these purposes, we leverage those funds to help with this step that the FAA said, this is what you got to do, or else. And I think the or else was you would not have a public air service. I don't believe anybody in this community is willing to lose that public air service, and I think we are put in a very difficult spot and forced to leverage those funds. But that's the step that we are taking right now in the commitment I believe we are taking. All good decisions. So I think Supervisor Gitlin made a good suggestion, maybe a public hearing specifically on these items might need to be had separate from this overall agenda within the next 2 weeks. I'm just not sure about everybody's schedules in order to come together. That's going to be a tough road. I know I've tried to get some other meetings scheduled in the next 2 weeks and people were out of town.
Mr. Chairman, it's probably going to be almost impossible for me to attend a meeting. I'll be going down to the broadband conference here shortly, and then I'll be home half a day before I have to leave for Washington, D.C.
Exactly.
And that'll be the 23rd, and then after that we have other meetings with CSAC. And
so that's the...
It's difficult.
And I'm not... and I've had these conversations with Kylie. I do think it's going to be difficult in the next 2 weeks to get us all together, but I do see the need for that discussion. Supervisor.
I just wanted to, and I think, Jay, you have every right to want to know exactly where this board sits and what individual members of the board sit in terms of quantifying, actually putting numbers behind what it is we'd like. I'm looking to find about $79,000. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to enhance our code enforcement department. I'm looking to make life easier for folks who live on roads that you can't ingress or egress. And I'm looking to help Southern Del Norte County in the form of giving that gateway some additional help. And I'm looking in the terms of just about $80,000. Now, I bring up the BICRA loan because we can make a decision on whether we defer that for a year. I guess this board can do that. And there was another item, Jay, and I think it was item number 30800, miscellaneous expense. It didn't identify it. Also happened to be a $96,000 figure. It was $96,201. I don't know what that is. The BICRA loan was $96,352. So they are different items and they're different lines. So I don't know what that miscellaneous expense was for item number 30800. Does that ring a bell to you, sir?
Which budget is it in?
It's under miscellaneous. It says miscellaneous expense. I have it here. And it's $96,201.
Again, is that in the 100 budget, the revenue and expense budget?
Yeah, let me look at this as I'm, and again, 30800, it's, the 100,000 is the 9 series. Yes.
Page 38 of the budget.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Yes, that's correct.
So on the left-hand side, what number do you have?
30800.
I'd have to defer that one to the auditor.
It's 30800. It's right below contribution to Border Coast, which is 291,608. Then it has miscellaneous expense below that, 30800. Back in 2014, it was actually $47,000, 430. It has never appeared, and now it appears in the recommended budget at $96,201. I do not know what that is.
Yeah, I'd have to defer that one to the auditor and ask him if he has an idea on that one. It is an expense line. It has no other detail on that one.
Maybe, is Clint here? I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Clint, would you come up? Give us some clarity on this. And again, I want to commend Mr. Serena. This is a very difficult job trying to balance pennies, which we don't have very much of. And we up here sit as elected officials trying to help folks improve the quality of your life. I've said that a dozen times. So we're trying to find, and it's a struggle. So 96,201, I'm looking at, I'll show you the page it's on.
I know which one it is.
You know exactly, okay,
Yep.
thank you. Please
That is
elucidate.
the court revenue audit, went over last 5 years, and there were some findings of ins and outs in revenue expenditures, and the state right now is claiming we owe them that amount of money over the last 5-year period. I have disagreed with them. I told them we're not paying it until they can show proof that we owe it. During the audit, they sent the final anyway, saying you owe the money, so I'm still arguing with the state if we owe that or not. However, with the state, usually they don't listen to him but themselves, and they will withhold other funding sources unless we pay them back. So that's a placeholder, and if we lose our argument with the state, we owe them that money. If we win our argument, then that money will become available. But in the meantime, we need to budget for the expense.
So you must budget it and the outcome that you're probably going to lose.
We're going to try to win, but
Right.
yes, usually with the
If
state.
you
they
win,
don't-
it's found money.
It was not found money. If we win, then it's because of money that we allocated to something else. But we won't know that until probably towards the end of the fiscal year. It's going to be months and months of disagreement with the state. But we have to budget for the cost, anticipation that we will owe those funds.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Supervisor Berkowitz.
So, Mr. Chairman, we have two other issues that
We do.
we're dealing with. One of the most important issues to me, because we've had members of the Chamber of Commerce here for several meetings, when we last proposed the Klamath Chamber of Commerce at a $40,000 contribution from our budget to promote and increase tourism in the southern part of the county. And of course, Mr. Chairman, you referred to that as tourism, a most important driver of revenue for the county. So what I'd like to do is make that proposal, or make that in a form of a motion, that we include this in the budget as item number 1, 3, 4, or 5 is priority.
Can I have clarification? So you want to add 40, not, because we already have just over 84,000 that goes to the chamber that covers all of Del Norte County, including Klamath. You know, and I went back and looked at all the brochures to make sure that there's, you know, Klamath is included in that. So are you saying you want to take that money that we're already dispersing and separate Klamath out from the chamber?
I think
Or are you asking to add on more?
Right. I think what we've found from Mr. Gitlin is that there are monies available, and I'm hoping to use those monies to promote the southern part of the county. And chamber members are here today, and I'm hoping they may want to weigh in on this. I am adding.
Yeah. All right, so we did close the public comment period on this public hearing, but I want this discussion to continue amongst the board. Supervisor Gitlin, Supervisor Hemmingson, if you want to weigh in before I make my comments on this specific item.
Well, we just jumped from one issue to another.
Right.
Are we just jumping around? Are we going to finish one, or are we just, Supervisor Cowan said he didn't want them lumped together, so we were separating them out, and now we're going on to the next item. Have we finished with?
Well, I'm separating this out, all right, from the others. I want to make sure that we're dealing with these 3 items that we've talked about. Now,
and again, for clarity,
I lumped them together in the beginning. I rescinded my motion so that we could deal with them one at a time.
And again, those 3 items are?
3 items are the $40,000 for the Klamath Chamber of Commerce to promote tourism in the southern part of the county, more funds for code enforcement, and that will basically return money to the county because we can lien properties that basically have not paid their property tax. And of course, the third is monies, and I'm not being specific, about $100,000 for non-county maintained roads.
Supervisor Gitlin.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to quantify this in number again, and I'll put it in everybody's head of $79,000, and I'm going to come down a little bit from that. That's what I was able to find where there's some flexibility that our board can make that decision. Yes, Klamath should have an increase of $2,500. It's not acceptable, and I think we need to increase that. I know we have a Chamber of Commerce locally, but there's needs down there, and we kick that can down the road, and I'd like to see Southern Del Norte County get a shot in the arm and show us what they can do, and I think that would be a positive result. So that, having said that, I'm looking for $79,000. I'm looking for a roads contingency fund that can be set aside to deal with some of the problems that our roads department has the capability of solving and fixing problems, but they don't have the funding to do it or the authority to do it because the board hasn't given them the authority to do it. But again, my goal is to help people, help folks who live in areas that are being impacted. And then of course in code enforcement, which I'm buoyed by a very real grand jury report that says we're not addressing that, we're kicking that down the road, and I actually quantified that number from this 80,000 of doubling its 14,500 rotating fund to 29,000. So adding that together, then when one of you folks call Dominic and Mello and say, you know, I've got a camper sitting in front of my home, a burnt out old camper, broken down camper, it's been here 3 months, can you please have it removed? Their code enforcement department says, well, we have a budget issue. So we need to put some monies into this so that, yes, it would be nice on the lien releases to have that, we'll deal with that in a short time about the reality of how much money is from the lien releases from Heidi Kunstel's report. But in the bottom line is we need to address some of the problems that are affecting our neighborhoods when we have this ongoing blight. And if we just let a house sit there day after week after month after year after year after year, a burned out house, well, what do you think is going to happen? It's more crime is going to happen. More people are going to say, why do I have to live in this neighborhood? Do something, supervisor. And they say that very loudly too. And they're right. So I'm looking to find $79,000, Jay, and from this budget, and I'm hopeful that you can sharpen your pencil, which you've, and again, commending you, you've done a wonderful job on balancing this budget. If you can find us that money, we can begin to address some of these problems. I think that would be very helpful.
Again, we are considering with this public hearing a balanced budget. We're not exactly sure where the monies would come from for the three items mentioned, specifically Klamath, county non-maintained roads, and code enforcement. We've discussed the county non-maintained roads. We're just entering into the discussion specific to Klamath that Supervisor Berkowitz. I'd like to conclude some of those discussions on the Klamath portion of this funding before we moved on to the last piece, which is code enforcement. I know Heidi Kungstl and Dominic Miller are here to help address some of those code enforcement issues, but let's conclude first the discussion on Klamath before we move on to code enforcement.
Well, Mr. Chairman, at last meeting, I gave you a plan that said, in return for that $40,000, we are going to have measurable objectives. They're going to have to be able to perform. And what we said was that they would have to increase tourism on an annual basis of 20% a year. 20%. That's a big figure. That's huge. Either they'll do it or they won't do it. And I think we need to create incentives. If we're going to finance areas, we need to create incentives for those people to perform. So it comes with serious strings attached. And I'm hoping that we can take a chance that they have said that we can do this. Let's give them a chance.
Sure, thank you. Supervisor Cowan.
I feel like we're jumping all over the place.
That's why I'm trying to get
I
this in
know.
order.
So a couple of
Conversations.
things. You refer back to 3, 4, and 5, which brings my head back to our priorities. And we need to get above a balanced budget before we can even hit those priorities. So I guess I need to understand, are we looking at putting these 3 items as 3, 4, and 5 on our priority list, that we get to it if we find the money? Or are we going to pull money from other areas to fund these? So that's the first thing I need to understand. And then the other thing is, you know, I have no problem talking about TOT and more funds. I have a problem putting strings on Klamath but not putting on the other chamber, because we're handing out money to them too. If we're going to do one, we got to do the other, so we really got to think about that. You know, if we get to that point and if we find the money, that's a discussion we need to have as well. And then kind of look at both overall, because right now money from that chamber is going to Klamath. I have looked at all the brochures and stuff, and there's quite a bit. And I've got them here if you want to see them. I know you got your hand up and we can look at them afterwards, but I have no problem talking about money down to Klamath. I have a problem of making sure that whatever we're holding Klamath accountable, that we're holding our local chamber, the Del Norte Chamber accountable as well. And then with that 100, you know, again, back to that 100,000, is it part of the priorities if we find the money? Or is Heidi going to tell us where she's going to miraculously find $100,000? You know, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I said that $100,000 on the non-county maintained roads was a negotiated item. So we can negotiate that to whatever we want to do. As far as the other Chamber of Commerce, you know, we've been giving the Del Norte Chamber of Commerce $80,000, whatever it is, for the Visitors Bureau and the Chamber. And I think it's time that we put them under the same constraints as we're putting Klamath under. Let's make some measurable objectives. Let's not just give money away. Let's increase tourism, and they're going to have to perform too. That's my opinion.
Would like to weigh in, Supervisor? Go for it.
I don't know how far back we want to go in. I would like to just touch on the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority. The commitment that we made to that airport was a commitment of economic development dollars. And if you want to kick a can down the road and restrict future boards in being able to do that same thing by not paying that money back, that's what you're going to do. So just to say that money's there and, oh, we can just forget it this year, we just won't pay it. We're still taking it away from the county. It's still coming out. That is economic development funds that I think are well spent, well needed, and I think we need to continue with that. So if you're planning on using that particular money, I'm totally against it. Getting down to the TOT, which I had a great discussion with Hannah Honer, and she indicated to me that she was interested in $30,000. And I'm not trying to throw you under the bus or anything, but that was our discussion. And so I don't know where the $40,000 came from, so I'm a little confused there. Are we just throwing money out there? And my feeling is, and I said this at the last meeting, that if Klamath is not getting their fair share of funds and they're producing, that money should come from the Visitors Bureau. That there's money there. My understanding is they're not spending all the money that they've got. Those conversations need to be made. Just to increase a budget out there, as Supervisor Berkowitz said, we just don't want to throw money at it. Hannah looked to me like a great plan. It was a great conversation we had. She's very focused. Trees of Mystery will survive and they'll be fine for the next 40 years or as long as she's around, because she's very passionate, very focused, very driven, and very enthusiastic, and I applaud her for that, and I think that's great. And I have no issue with putting a little pressure on the Visitors Bureau to make sure that we can fund those types of things that you're wanting to do. But I think that conversation needs to be had, not just throwing the money there. If we're not being effective with the Visitors Bureau that we got, and you've got a better plan, let's go with your plan. There's a successful business that's been down there for a long time, and they have a great marketing plan, and always have, and probably always will. So maybe we should follow that plan rather than what we've got. That's just my comment. And I'm really not interested in just throwing more money down in southern Del Norte County just because.
Supervisor
Mr.
Berkowitz.
Chairman, I'd like to clarify Mr. Hemingson's comments. The discussion about $40,000 came from definite conversations with John Thompson and Kylan and a number of people from the Chamber of Commerce. So this wasn't my idea for the amount of money. This is their idea for the amount of money. So we're not throwing, in fact, in other situations, we throw money away. What do? We don't make anybody accountable. We say, here's the money, we hope you spend it correctly. With the Klamath Chamber of Commerce, we're saying, here's the money, you better perform or you won't get the money. You're going to have to increase tourism, right? What better way to be able to have some benchmarks that you have to achieve in order to receive the revenue? Because if he increases the tourism by 20%, who benefits? We all benefit because we get additional TOT, and it also helps the county. I don't see any downside here.
Supervisor Gitlin.
You know, I'm going to respectfully disagree with Supervisor Hemingson's verbiage. No one's throwing money anywhere. We're allocating it, and we're doing it in a wise and prudent manner. We're addressing issues that you folks have brought to our attention. And we've kicked that can down the road, and budget after budget, we don't ever seem to do anything about it. And what we're up here, these five folks are sitting in front of you here, are in what appears to be struggling, and we are, trying to find a way to allocate funds to improve all of Del Norte County. That's what we're trying to do. And we have to make that effort. If we don't do it and we say, well, we can't afford it, well, then nothing ever is going to change here. You're going to have more $2,500 that the Klamath puts in, and they've invested $78,000, and they get, $2,500 back. It's clearly unfair. They're developing a lot of the 400 $81,000 worth of TOT, I forgot the exact number. You guys are developing a healthy share. You ought to get your fair share. And to give you $2,500, that's throwing money away. I'll agree with that. We need to allocate more funding for you. You're doing a good job. We want you, and here's the carrot, we want you to do a better job. And we're going to reward you. Now, roads, we all have them, and I know we're moving around subjects, sir. I know that.
Thank you.
These are issues that we're talking about the budget. This is the 1015 item we're talking about. So we're lumping these subjects together because we're trying to address problems and not push them down for the next budget, and we'll see. So now we have that opportunity to address these issues. So I support, if we're talking about Klamath right now,
yes,
I support a substantial increase from the monies they're already receiving with incentives derived around it to help this community prosper and be even greater than it is. So if how we quantify that number, I thought it was a 60% number of the amount of dollars that they had put in TOT was $78,000, and that's how I came, 40%, excuse me. It was 40% of $78,000, and that's how I think we came up with the 42,000 is what my arithmetic tells me. So if that number can be amended to a level where we're at least making a step in the right direction, then bravo to Klamath and Del Norte County, and go for it. Now, if you don't do it, we tried, and then it's up to you. So that's the subject on Klamath, and when we get around to code enforcement, Dominic, don't go away. I want to talk about you too. Thank you.
So I've weighed in on tourism a lot in my history with Del Norte County. Prior to 2005, TOT, specifically for the county and the city, was pretty much stagnant. There was no investment in public funds from the general fund into tourism marketing for our community. Many folks referred to it, as John Thompson did, as a redwood curtain between us and Humboldt County. Visitors never came here. When we asked why they were coming here, most folks were coming here from the redwoods. But an organizing effort took place, specifically by the Chamber of Commerce, starting in 2005, with a report that was issued by the Tri-Agency that looked at not only transient occupancy tax revenue, but other measurements to try to see if there was prudent enough effort, if efforts were made, by the investment of transient occupancy dollars in tourism marketing. That report suggested absolutely. And in 2007, both the city and the county, tribal governments, all three, and private partnerships invested in tourism marketing with the goal of getting above $230,000 a year, which is a figure that was set by Sam Handelman, who was a professor at Oregon State University, who had been specifically working around the development of Bend, Oregon, which became a tourism destination, Oregon, and nobody's going to argue how that turned out. It is clearly a tourism destination. Since that 2007 investment, looking at measurements of transient occupancy dollars both within the city and the county, there is no question that that investment has yielded results. Our TOT, which was well below $250,000, has doubled. Just within the county alone. The city's TOT, I believe, has gone above 1.2 million. It was around $750,000 at the time. When you look at other comparable measurements, if you're going to look at sales tax revenue or property tax revenue, those have not climbed at the same rates as our TOT revenues. So the argument to be made, or the discussion to be had around whether or not investing TOT dollars in tourism marketing for this community is extremely clear to me. It's really one of the only sources that this community, this county, the city of Crescent City is seeing revenue generation, which that revenue generation, if not reinvested, is not going to continue to grow. It's not only support our general fund, but support projects like we're discussing today here with code enforcement, public safety, non-county maintained roads. And I don't see, unfortunately, any other mechanism out there at this time, property tax, sales tax, growing at similar rates. And I know because of the studies that have been done, there is a lot of room to put heads in beds outside our shoulder seasons, which would be October through April. Those are TOT dollars that would be generated if we could market this community during those periods of time. To me, it's a prudent investment around TOT. The chamber has proven its worth in the efforts it's done. It might have not spent some of those dollars wisely or not spent all those dollars in a given fiscal year, as Supervisor Hemmingson has brought forward, but the efforts that were made by the Visitors Bureau to spend and allocate resources to marketing our community have been successful just by the measurement of TOT alone. Can Klamath do the same? There's no question in my mind. No question in my mind Klamath could do the same. Hopefully, private business will help contribute to those efforts of the Klamath Chamber of Commerce by adding to whatever allocation, if the county so chooses to vote on that today, whatever allocation that might be, and make that a considerable war chest annually to market. But, you know, my opinion specifically around tourism marketing, as a driver for this community, knowing that we have one of the best destinations in the world to go to, it's clear. We've got the rooms, we've got the empty beds, and we could generate a tax around that. That's my opinion before we close on tourism. If you want to weigh in any further on that before we move to code enforcement, please feel free.
Well, I just want to make the point that we have made a commitment to the Chamber and to the Visitors Bureau to allocate X number of dollars, $84,000 in our case, and the city puts in a little bit more, I think. And that number really hasn't changed. And yet, the tourism dollars, or the TOT tax, has continued to rise. So I don't know that you can equate more money as being the driver to getting more TOT tax. I would like to see how those dollars come back to the county for a reinvestment. I haven't seen that report yet. I can understand when you market your business, and I'm going to pick on Trees and Mystery because I love them to death. You have your own marketing campaign, and you can tell when you get those dollars back. When your investment is working, you can see that return almost immediately. For county dollars, for public funds, I don't know that that's so obvious, other than just the fact of increasing the TOT does increase a certain amount. So I agree with that. I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around public funds going maybe farther than they, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to go back to saying that the Visitors Bureau needs to be involved. And if we're going to take some money and send it down to Klamath, then we need to think about taking it out of the Visitors Bureau's fund.
And you know, Supervisor Hemmingson brings up some good points, but at the same time, a lot has changed in a decade. And when we originally set out on these goals to market this community, more specifically the Visitors Bureau, social media was not what it was. And if you just look at social media alone and generation of advertising through the internet, through the web, whatever social platform you're on, there's no question, based on just tracking hits, that people, younger people who are now traveling, who are now in their 20s, are bringing their families to our community, and they're traveling based on a web system that has developed over the last decade. You spend less money putting money into the investment of internet advertising. It is the way of the future. It's allowed the monies with our Visitors Bureau and hopefully the Klamath Chamber of Commerce to go farther in bringing people to our area. But there's no question, times have changed in how marketing's done. The days of brochures, the days of radio potentially reaching well beyond our borders, the days of print. It's a different world. Supervisor Berkowitz.
Mr. Chairman, I thought I heard you lay out the public money that we spent in 2007, $100,000 commitments and all of this kind of thing, and the increase in tourism. Before that, there was no commitment for real tourism dollars, and we didn't have the increase in tourism. So Mr. Hemmingson says, well, I don't see the connection. Mr. Chairman, I thought you just laid out that connection. Is that right?
Yes, and that was based on public studies.
But it was a different connection.
Yep.
You got a
So-
whole different connection. You weren't listening to what I said. For the last 10 years, we've been investing exactly the same amount of money. Every year for the last 10 years. TOT has continued to rise, but we've been investing exactly the same amount of money.
And those dollars have gone further because we've utilized new media in order to make those dollars more effective.
So you have another explanation. I'm putting out facts, and you're putting out conjecture.
No conjecture, just facts.
Okay, so I think we beat this one up enough to have good discussion around it, robust discussion around the investment in Klamath. I do want to move on to code enforcement if everybody's willing. I know Ms. Kunstl, Mr. Mello, you're still here in the audience. Do you have a solution for us around code enforcement? There seemed to be some willingness by the board to really consider additional expenditures out of the general fund towards code enforcement this fiscal year. What are some of your thoughts around this?
Well, there are different options. Some include not actually adding any money, but using the money that we already have, which would be to create the revolving fund and take the $14,500 that was budgeted for this fiscal year and place it into that account, and then to adopt a policy that any type of lien repayments that we receive be placed into that revolving fund. If you had money, new money to add, which in my board report I explained, I could not find any money within the community development department to take from, you could put that money into that same revolving fund to be seed money essentially to allow us to do more abatements, which would then at some point come back as lien repayments depending on how the money was spent and whether or not we could record liens for it.
Thank you. Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yeah, and I think that's, I think the idea, the premise works. I mean, it's kind of a great plan. I've heard the rumors that it could be profitable. I haven't seen that in any of the reports that I've seen. We've been gaining about almost $14,000 a year in lien repayment payments, if I remember right in what I read. And that's about what we give the program. So it's kind of a wash for that part of it. That doesn't include staff or personnel to do that. And the other thing that I have a problem with, we never spent any of the money that we allocated last year. Not one dime. And now we're asking for more? Is that not right? Or maybe I should say one dime. But we didn't spend.
No, we did spend some of the money. We did not spend all of it. And there are a variety of reasons for that, which Officer Mello could explain. A lot of it comes back to the need for the revolving fund, because we get into a project and we think we're going to be potentially allocating those funds for the abatement, and then sometimes they resolve themselves, sometimes they don't. And then you get to June and there's no time to, if you have to contract with someone in order to do the abatement, et cetera, and then the money's gone. I mean, this has only been the last 2 years that this has happened. I acknowledge what you've pointed out. The year prior had to do with the fact that Code Enforcement Officer Mason was retiring, and we needed to take money from the professional services budget in order to have an overlap when we hired Code Enforcement Officer Mello, because the position was so unique that there was no one on staff that would be able to train him without, other than Officer Mason. But given the opportunity to have the revolving fund, for example, the money that we didn't spend, we would have been able to, we have a couple of really good projects that we could have picked up in July or August.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
And
wondering.
Thank you, Ms. Kunstl, for thinking a little bit outside of the box on how potentially this could work into our general fund allocations.
I'm wondering if we can hear from Mr. Mello.
Absolutely.
Here's your chance.
Yeah. Moment of fame.
Mr. Mello, just a question for you. If you had more money for code enforcement, do you think that we could get more of a return on liens that are coming into the county, considering where we have 14,000 coming back from liens and we're spending 14,000 essentially on code enforcement? If we had more money going for code enforcement, would we get more money back through liens?
We struggle in our county due to property values. A lot of times the nuisance, the mess on the property far exceed the value of the property. So if we do in fact go in and do the cleanup, it's going to exceed the property value, and then combine back taxes on that is going to add to that. So that you'll see that we can't always recoup money, so it could be a huge loss. There are some properties which we can lien and recoup our money, but they're far and few between.
Supervisor Gitlin.
Dominic, you know I probably call you more times than I should, and that's because this is a very passionate item for me from day one since I've been on this board. But I hear from you, and I hear from Heidi, and I heard from your predecessor, Dave Mason, if we had more money, we could deal with some of these problems. The liens that we put on these properties sometimes wash out, sometimes they don't make any sense. But it doesn't leave the blighted properties, and we all have them all over the county, sitting there vacant, burnt out in some cases, stigmatizing and staining our beautiful county. And they stay there day after week after year after year after year with our hands crossed. Well, we wish we had the $3,000 to do this, and we don't have it. You have to wait till the new allotment money comes in. Real simple question, can you use more money to get rid of these problems? And if you can, it's going to improve our county. It's going to be a positive for all the residents and all the visitors who come driving through here and say, boy, this is a beautiful county. They're doing their job. We don't see these vehicles abandoned on the roads and in your streets in front of your houses, and houses that aren't livable, that only attract certain kinds of people to live in them, and with the ancillary problems that are caused by that. So this is an investment in our future. Can you use more money, sir?
Yes, we could definitely use more money. With Mr. Supervisor Berkowitz's question, I don't want to see code enforcement to appear as it's a revenue-generating program. For moral reasons and the property values in our community. So with some projects, yes, I could go in and help the property owner clean up. Sometimes we have a property owner that's willing to but not able to. So we can come in with funds and from a moral side, recoup 100% of our costs without assessing civil penalties and whatnot. That property only has a year to pay that back. So we can definitely cause people to lose their land that are really not criminal in nature. They're just civil violations. On the other side, but I guess to answer your question, yes, we could use more funds. We would achieve more. We could recoup some of that cost back, and some of the properties we may even generate a little bit of revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Berkowitz.
I have to think back to the grand jury report. All right, the grand jury report made a big deal about code enforcement and what we needed to do. They don't normally deal with minor problems, yet they saw this as a major problem. And in most cases, in a lot of cases, when this comes before the board or for a response on a grand jury report, it's usually kick the can down the road. It's usually, okay, we may deal with it one of these days, et cetera, et cetera. But in this particular case, we have the opportunity, we have the obligation to be able to do something and implement the grand jury report. So that would be falling on your shoulders. Apparently, you must not be working very hard. Well, I doubt that. Okay. You're dealing with a $14,000 budget. When you remove one RV from the street, what does it cost you?
$1,500 to $2,000.
Okay. So removing about 7 or 8 RVs, and that's it, your budget's shot.
It is over.
What could you use that budget for if you had more money?
Well, it'd improve the quality of life for our residents. We've got neighborhoods that there's, you know, whether it's a drug house, nuisance house, dilapidated, rats, trash, you know, it's impacting their quality of life. And I get them phone calls every day. If I had a larger fund to address them properties within the capacity of that property's value, so not necessarily maybe I can go in and do 100% cleanup, but I could do a substantial cleanup which would remedy the problem, improve the quality of life, and eventually the property owner will step in and do what's right and finish that, or they'll go down that road of paying the lien or defaulting in their taxes, which then hopefully an investor or another person would come in and take possession of that property that would long-term bring it up to standard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, appreciate your time, Mr. Mello, for weighing in on that. If we have any more questions, we'll bring you back up.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, I think Supervisor Cowan brought up a good point earlier. I think we've had some very educated and robust discussion around specifically 3 items: a donation, not a donation, a commitment of dollars to the Klamath Chamber of Commerce, a discussion around county non-maintained roads, and then now a code enforcement allocation. One question I have, and it's specific to Supervisor Cowan's question, is prioritization on our list, or if this is a commitment that the board wants to make outside that list prioritization, which would actually generate CEO Serena to go back and look at trying to put a commitment in place for these items instead of being prioritized, and if money does come in, that next priority being hit. How does the board see that playing out?
The reason I put it 3, 4, and 5 is because, as Jay Serena indicated, we may not even get past number 2.
Sure.
So consequently, if we put it way back, let's say 11, 12, and 13, we can guarantee that none of this will ever get done. What we're trying to say here is that we want to make a commitment to do something different, to move this county forward.
Sure.
We've had the same kinds of discussions year after year with the priority basis. It's basically been the same. Not much change. Now we have the opportunity to put some new priorities in place. This board either can say yes, no, or kick it down the road. That's what they can do. I'm hoping that in the process of a 3, 4, and 5, at least we have a chance of getting at least something done.
And
one new item.
Please clarify for me again your 3 priority, your 4 priority, and your 5 priority.
Okay. My 3 priority is the $40,000 for the Chamber of Commerce in Klamath, because I think we're going to get a good return off of that. My next priority is to implement the grand jury's report, and therefore we would say for code enforcement. And the third, even though it's against my better nature to put this in number 3, but for some budget, maybe even as little as $5,000 per district for non-county maintained roads. Those are my 3, 4, and 5.
And that prioritizes it. Is there an allocation you're looking at for code enforcement? The dollar amount specifically?
You know, I think Mr. Gitlin had a good idea, and I'd like him to address that.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't have as robust figures as you. I've looked to find some monies, and I've divided it up a little bit differently. I saw code enforcement as number 3, and I'd like to augment their budget from the additional $14,500 that they already funded each July 1st. An additional $14,500, total $29,000. The Klamath District, and I'm not going to speak for negotiating that figure down, I had between $25,000 and $30,000. And then the Roads Department discretionary contingency fund to be allocated on board approval so that we can get some of these roads addressed with minimum standard of counties so that people can ingress and egress their property somewhere in the $20,000 to $25,000 area. And I think my figure came up to about $80,000. And that was the figure that I was looking for to ask CAO Serena to find, mostly in miscellaneous administration and Board of Supervisor budgets. I feel it's imperative that the other budgets, the other departments are running extremely well considering their challenges, and they should not be touched. So we're looking at areas where we can address these problems, and I figure I have for all three. And again, these are amendable figures. Nothing is cut in stone, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $80,000 to be reallocated in those three areas on respectively 3, 4, and 5, and you can pick the order in which you want to go. I don't have an issue other than they're all three are addressed.
Supervisor Cowan?
I agree with Supervisor Berkowitz and Gitlin as far as putting them in 3, 4, and 5. I don't see Klamath as 3. I see code enforcement as 3. I'm not sure if you want to see actual figures right now. I think that comes down to if we even find, because right now we're at a balanced budget and we're talking about monies that we're looking for. But I see code enforcement as 3, roads and, well, Klamath and then roads.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
So you're okay with pushing those other priorities down the list? Is that what I'm hearing? Because we are funded to which priority? Number 5 right now, Jay? Is that right? So we're funded to number 5 right now on our priority list. Now you're planning on putting these 3 things at 3, 4, and 5 and pushing the ones that were at 3, 4, and 5 down the list?
I am not. I was my understanding we were funded to 1 and 2. That's
No.
what I heard from Jay yesterday. So I'm incorrect then on that.
We are through 5, which is fund the debt service obligation for Border Coast. 4 is capital improvements budget, and 3 is the contingency fund. 2 is mandated programs, and 1 is current service levels.
Yeah. So 3 is the airport. Tell me 4 again.
So 1 is current service levels. 2 is mandated programs. 3 is the contingency fund. 4 is the capital improvement budget. 5 is the annual debt service on the airport terminal. And 5, did I say 5? Yeah,
You did.
airport terminal.
So you
6
got
is
me
the general reserve request. 7 would be the county engineer position, and 8 would be the resource position.
And those are things that we have yet to do: the reserve, the engineer, the resource person, which we have needed badly. And I understand that there's pet project, or there's projects in certain districts that everybody would like to get done. I have them in my district, but I'm not interested in sacrificing the priorities that the entire board has seen in the past that we really haven't ever gotten to, and now we're going to shove something else in there. I'm a little disappointed.
Can I clarify?
Please, CAO Serena.
From the beginning, a long time ago, there was a motion made by Supervisor Berkowitz. He mentioned he had rescinded it. I didn't hear that one. Is that correct?
That's correct. I had rescinded that motion.
Okay, was there a second motion in that?
There has not been a second motion.
I don't think there was, was there? No.
There was a mention of it, so okay.
Thank you. So we're in somewhat of a dilemma. I know board priorities 1 and 2. I don't think anybody wants to change those 2 priorities, but the debate now is shifting priorities, which would allow for, if money became available in the budget, for funding around to Klamath, code enforcement, and county non-maintained roads, but it does impact our capital improvement budget, it does impact our contingency fund, and it does impact our payback around the airport terminal. That's what I'm hearing.
And my understanding
Supervisor
was
Cowan.
these would come in after other funds were found, beyond what's already been funded. So my
Correct.
mistake.
But under the budget.
My impression was that the money was going to be taken away from these ones that were funded, which are 3, 4, and 5, that now are funded, and then these are going to take their place.
And that wasn't my understanding, so I was wrong.
I don't think this takes into account Mr. Gitlin's found money. Remember, he just quoted some $80,000 worth of money that could be available.
Yeah, and this might be a lot longer discussion because we don't know if Auditor Controller Chad agrees with that analysis. We don't know if the CAO agrees with that analysis, and we don't necessarily even have to take a position on this today. I mean, we're opening this discussion, this public hearing, to really try to prioritize what we're hearing from our constituents is important, and healthy
Mr.
discussion
Chairman,
on that.
we just have one more meeting that we're going to have
I
to
understand,
finalize everything.
and that's why I thought it might be a good idea to have another one, as Supervisor Gitlin suggested, around this. But you're here, unfortunately, not going to be here for 2 weeks until our next meeting, so I'm not sure how we could have a healthy discussion with one of our supervisors missing. And, you know, we could kick the can, we could lower the priority around contingency. I'm not sure if that's a wise decision or not. We could defer our capital improvements, which everybody knows what those are, but we could defer those till next year, potentially, and continue having some drops of water hit everybody on the head in certain buildings. But not sure where everybody wants to go with this. And we do need a motion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me make a motion. I'll just make them one at a time. How's that? The first motion I would make is that we fund the Klamath Chamber of Commerce for $40,000 with measurable objectives that have already been enumerated in last meeting. And I'm making that as a motion.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Would Supervisor Berkowitz consider a lower figure than 40,000 so that we can address these issues and have a greater chance? Would he embrace a number lower than 40,000 to make some improvement and not aggravate the situation by trying to find more dollars?
Let me do this. Let me make that motion of 30,000, but also lower the measurable objectives too, because we're giving them less money to work with. So if we were to make that 30,000 with 15% tourism TOT increase, I would amend the motion.
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to address these items one at a time. This would be for a $30,000 commitment to the Klamath Chamber of Commerce in position 3. Any further discussion?
Can I make a motion?
We did open the public hearing and we closed public comment. Do we need to reopen it, council?
If we're going to vote on it.
Now that you have a motion, it would be a fair thing to do.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and open public comment then on this item only, which would be to move to a position 3 in our budget, $30,000 to the Klamath Chamber of Commerce.
Something that I should probably comment on. Kylan Honer, I live in Bob's district, District 5. I'm the president of the Klamath Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for this debate, and thank you for so vigorously going after that. We want to do our part. I agree wholeheartedly with Bob in terms of there should be measurable goals behind this money, and that we really want to improve and we want to increase the TOT. That is the only reason that we want to do this, is to bring economic development to Klamath, to get people to come there to spend money. I believe Chris, or Chair Howard, made a great point. The money may have stayed the same, but the efficiency with how it's being spent has increased quite a bit. With internet and being able to reach more people with less dollars, you really do see that. And that's why you've seen the TOT increase despite the amount of money not increasing. It's been my experience working in tourism that is the case. We have a lot of experience and a lot of experienced people behind us at the Trees of Mystery, down in Klamath, doing this type of stuff. I do believe that it can work, and if it doesn't, if we aren't able to achieve our goals, please, there should be actions behind that as well. Thank you very much. Any questions? Should I? Okay.
Thank you. Public comment on this item.
Well, is it afternoon? Almost.
Almost.
Chair, board members, Blake Kinskor, Mayor, Crescent City. I'm also the chairman of the Visitor Bureau. I've spent 3 years working on this project. Many of the things that the chair mentioned regarding the history of all of this from 2005 forward are absolutely right on. I will tell you that we are in a process right now of some very, very serious flux of how all this is going to play out in our county. We are investing in cash dollars currently just over $156,000 between the county and the city, plus the in-kind, obviously, that the Chamber and the Visitor Bureau take access of the cultural center. So with that said, I would be very hesitant to establish a precedent today that says if we give X number of dollars, we're going to attach it to any percentage of increase in tourism. Who's going to define what increase in tourism is? That is a very complicated assessment. We hear regularly, we need to know what the ROI is, the return on investment. Is it just that TOT has increased, and the city's TOT this year is estimated to go over $1.3 million. It's a significant portion of our general fund. And so when I speak as the chairman of the Visitor Bureau, I always also look as mayor of Crescent City. I have a lot of investment dollars at stake here, and believe wholeheartedly in the investment of public funds, and believe wholeheartedly that we need to do a better job of marketing our entire community, including Klamath. With that said, I do believe that we need to stay focused on the mechanism that we currently have, and if in fact there needs to be an improvement in what is done with the investment that we're currently making through the Chamber, and then on to the Visitor Bureau, because the Visitor Bureau is a committee of the Chamber of Commerce. It doesn't stand as a separate entity. And even though it doesn't stand as a separate entity, lots of other entities have had their hands in trying to help develop what this is going to be, including the Council of Economic Advisors, the Tri-Agency, the county, the city, and the Chamber. And we've had lots and lots of voices, and I think that we are, for the first time in maybe 7 or 8 years, coming to some clarity of how we're going to move forward with this. My feeling would be that we will be coming back in a year from now, 18 months from now, saying we need to invest more money. We now have established the systems and the checks and balances, and the Visitor Bureau is doing its job of marketing the south portion of our county just as well as it is the north portion of our county or the east. And that in doing all of that, that we will continue to move forward. I feel like if you, and I know my time is up, if we defer some of that funding now because you don't have the money, if you take that money away from the current funding, because that's the only place it sounds like it's going to come from, you're going to cripple what's being done and where we're headed right now. I really believe we're on the right track. I think that we can work together throughout the whole county. I think that what you will see with the new investment in tourism dollars through the Chamber and through the Visitor Bureau going forward is going to be something that will address these needs without allocating separate funding. That's my personal view, both as mayor and especially as the visitor chair, who have spent 3 years trying to get us to where we are now. I don't want to see that undercut. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good morning. I'm Geneva Wicki. I'm here as a private citizen at this moment and a co-owner of the Rock Hawaiian in Klamath. And you heard from my mom, Jan Wortman, at the last meeting. She unfortunately cannot be here today, and so I'm here to speak on her behalf. She said at the end of her presentation last time, and I don't know if it was exactly clear, so I just wanted to reiterate it. The RECWA provides about $35,000 a year of TOT alone by ourselves. And as Yurok tribal members who own a business on the Yurok reservation, we have the option to incorporate under the Yurok tribe and to pay our TOT to the tribe, much like the tribe's casino pays its TOT to itself. That's an option that we're able and willing to take, but we, as she said before, don't want to. We believe in the county, we believe in this community, we want to be supportive, but we do want you to be clear that that is an option that we have. As well as my aunt Susan Maston, who now owns the Steelhead Lodge. Again, another tribal member who owns a business on the reservation and does provide TOT. So I just want that to be included in your decision making today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Hannah Honer, live in Klamath. Couple things. I feel that this discussion has gone in the way where Del Norte County Chamber does feel under attack. I don't want them to be under attack. We do want to work with them. Again, here we are trying to decide where money comes from and where it is and all of that. So I understand why the discussion has gone that way, but I do want to say from the Klamath perspective, it's not that that chamber is under attack, it's that we do have our own chamber that I think, Supervisor Gitlin, you have very eloquently said, $2,500 is not enough to do anything. So I think this has brought to light something that we need to continue as a community, that the board is not going to need to dictate that, yes, we do need to work together with the Del Norte Chamber. We need to be like glue, and I think that hasn't happened, and I think it needs to happen. Okay, thank you. Again, the $30,000 that I mentioned to Supervisor Hemmingson, that is my floor. I just want to say that out loud and not go on record as saying I only want $30,000. The Klamath Chamber would very much appreciate whatever can be allocated. In order to do an effective marketing campaign, you do need a certain amount of money. I think anybody in marketing would agree with that, and $30,000 would be the bare bones. So I really do want to say that I appreciate this discussion. I think you guys are all on the right track. I think you all understand what's going on here. It's very hard to sit in this room and listen and not respond. So I'm responding. I don't have an answer for you, except that we do need this money, and I appreciate being considered a priority.
Thank you. Okay, further public comment on this item? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. We have a motion, a second on the table, and just to clarify it again, that this motion is to move to third priority, $30,000 commitment to the Klamath Chamber of Commerce, and that motion did not include a measurement per se, or anything that Mayor Inscourt had mentioned, a measurement.
Can I make a second motion? No?
Absolutely, you may.
Okay. Can I make a comment first?
Please, if you want to couch your comment and make a motion.
I'm with Mayor as far as measurements, and I was trying to go through back to Jeff's presentation, because the one thing that struck out to me, TOT is definitely showing a rise, but they're not staying because sales tax did not. Do you guys remember that? And I was trying to find the exact figures. So when you're talking about measurements, Bob, that kind of, we need to understand what type of measurements, because if they're staying and leaving and we're not keeping them here, that's not helping the sales tax, and I think that's a goal. So let me finish. So, but again, I'm not against money to Klamath. I pulled out different things that the Visitors Bureau and Chamber are doing, and they're very clearly including Klamath in all of this, from Smith River to Klamath. This is the Del Norte Chamber of Commerce. So funds are definitely going down to those things. I understand you guys have your own, and we give you a little bit of money, and I'm definitely okay with talking about more. Is it a third place priority for me? Probably not. My priority would probably be, and my motion would be to put it in that position of 6 so that we can find the money. I have no problem, with the amount, or we can talk about that, but I do have a problem on the measurement and how we're going to do that, if it was to go there. So I would kind of make a motion to put it as the 6th priority after the things that are already been funded, because we're talking about we need to try to find more money to put it there.
Is there
And I think that's
a dollar amount associated with your motion?
I'm all about putting more money into marketing, so I'm fine with the 30,000. So 30,000, but in the 6th priority.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm stuck between a rock and a hard spot here. But I think I will second the motion. I think it's just totally irresponsible to put anything above the county's own contingency fund, which any of these things that you put above priority 3 puts our contingency fund somewhere below that. That's just irresponsible. I'm not happy with it even going above our resource person or our county engineer, and forgive me, I forgot what the other one is down there. Oh, the reserve fund. So I think TOT holds a place, and I'm still in favor of taking it from, if we're going to take it, we need to take it from the Visitors Bureau, even though Mayor Inscore is not wanting to go that direction. But I think we fund that, and that's where the money should come from. That's why we fund that particular project. But to put these things above county essentials, these are absolute essential. A contingency fund is an absolute essential. We've used it, I think, every year that I've been on the board. And to not have a contingency fund is totally irresponsible.
Supervisor Berkowitz.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to clarify that motion that I made. That did come with the strings attached, the 15%. But other than that, if we put this at position number 6, what we're really saying is we will not fund this position. We could vote for that, but it'll never become a reality. That's called irresponsibility, all right? Because it guarantees that the board looked like it was funding something, but it really wasn't.
We just discussed sending it back to Jay of options of where there might be funds. I mean, Mr. Gitlin went through all kinds of things. So if there is money to be had, we're talking $30,000. If he finds 10, are they going to turn their nose up to 10? I'm putting it in a position that if we find some funds.
No, that's exactly right. You're absolutely right. If we found the funds,
And
we
you
will
guys
not
act like
find the
there's
funds
there.
because we're at position number 5 in funding. That's exactly what the CAO said. We can fund up to 5. 6, not there.
So we do have your motion, Supervisor Berkowitz, seconded by Supervisor Gitlin. We have Supervisor Cowan's motion, seconded by Supervisor Hemmingson. One's to put it at position 3, one's to put it at position 6. Obviously, contingencies currently funded at $100,000. Capital improvements are currently funded at $100,000 in the budget. BACRA, again, remind me, Jay, is currently funded at?
It's approximately 96, 98.
Position, are you looking for position or amount?
Before we call it questions, is there any willingness by the board to reduce any of those items 3, 4, or 5 commitments in the budget by $10,000, $15,000? Or do you want to leave the contingency at $100,000, the capital improvements at $100,000, and the BACRA repayment at 96.9? Just a question.
I'm saying those could come after position 3, 4,
All right.
or 5.
That's the clarity I was looking for. Thank you. I agree with that. Okay, so we're going to call the question first on Supervisor Cowan's motion, seconded by Supervisor Hemmingson, which was to put at position 6 in the amount of $30,000 the funding of the Klamath Chamber of Commerce.
Would you like me to do Supervisor Cowan's motion first?
Please, that's, yeah. That was the clarity, position number 6.
Supervisor Gitlin?
No.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
No.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. So that puts us at position number 6, if funds were to become available. And obviously, with some clarity and some work that could continue to be done by CS Arena, there could be some room that is found within our current budget. I know it's going to take some time, but there could be some room in some other line items if the board so chooses to find that room.
So for clarity's sake, is the board now, based on that priority, indicating that the numbers that are in the contingency and the numbers that are in capital infrastructure are correct, or would you like to see those reduced a little bit?
That was the question I asked, and the question I received back is that there would be no willingness to reduce those amounts in contingency, no willingness to reduce those amounts in capital improvements, and no willingness to reduce the BACRA payback.
Hold on a second, Mr. Chair. That's not what I heard.
Well, that's the question I was asked. So if you want to clarify, please feel free.
I do. And without further dissecting this, I heard CAO Serena say, are we willing to amend the contingency fund at what, 100,000? Give me the numbers again, Jay. The contingency fund at 100?
Contingency is 100 and capital infrastructure is at 100. The BACRA loan, as I mentioned before, would be a complete separate action because there is a promissory note that already directs that to be paid.
All right, I'm going to do some of that arithmetic we talked about before. I'm going to ask that the contingency fund be lowered. Excuse me as I do my math here. That would be, if I do my math correctly here, down to 65,500. Which would allow at least 2 of these issues to be dealt with in a balanced budget. And I'll make that as a motion.
Jay, I'm not sure I'm even understanding this. Do you understand?
What I believe Supervisor Gitlin said was to lower the contingency down.
The lower the contingency amount, which you mentioned, is $100,000.
Right.
So I'm asking,
To
we
which
still have a
number?
contingency and we still have the order, to a total of 65,500 as a contingency fund, not 100,000.
Okay. Supervisor Cowan?
Howard, I'm looking at Alan sitting up here, who's Director of Maintenance, and we're talking about messing with maintaining, the contingency fund, which is our emergency needs, and then the, capital improvement budget on deferred maintenance. Do you want to speak at all to all the issues we have so people understand that lowering it even a little bit? I mean, what we have, in my opinion, doesn't even begin to touch what we need. So maybe, are you guys okay with hearing?
And please keep it brief.
Oh.
Well, I see some legs shaking behind the dais up here.
Right now, the capital improvement budget and the contingency fund are both very important to me. We have buildings such as the Vets Hall, which has a mold problem that's been going on for a couple years that really needs to be addressed first and foremost. We have roofs at the rec gym, the building maintenance, as well as the jail, which are all in need of being done within the next year or two. And if we could get a quarter of those projects done this year with what we have, I'd be happy. But the mold project in itself, I believe last time it came in at $60-some thousand. So, and I guarantee that the roofs aren't going to come in any cheaper than 30 or 40 each. So,
okay, thank you. Is there a second? Was that even in the form of a motion?
Well, I did put it in the
Supervisor?
form of a motion, but
I'll second that motion.
okay. I just want to make sure that if we can, and this board can struggle through finding the funds necessary to address these 3 items and amending certain budgeted items to a level which is acceptable to this board, that would be the goal of that motion.
Understood, thank you. And it was seconded by Supervisor Berkowitz. To reduce contingency to 65,000. Correct.
Yeah, I think it was 60, it was what I'm doing my math on it, 65,000, which gives us 35,000 to address other areas.
Okay, very good. We have a motion, a second on the table. Let's open it up for public comment specifically on that motion. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, can you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
No.
Supervisor Cowan?
No.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
No. All right. Let's address code enforcement.
I guess that's on my, I'll be brief because I know it's at that time of the day. I'd like to make a motion to increase the code enforcement budget an additional $14.5 thousand added to the already existing $14.5 thousand, making a total code enforcement budget of $29,000.
Are you asking that to go in what position? 7?
Oh, are we talking about monetary?
A monetary and positioning, if you could please.
No, I'm not prepared to. I think at this point, 1, 2, 3. Jay, give me the order again, so what we have here.
The current order is maintaining current service levels, which is employee payroll and benefits, fund mandated programs as required by federal and state law, maintain a contingency fund of $100,000 to address the emergency needs, maintain a county capital improvement budget, that's $100,000, fund annual debt service obligation to Border Coast Airport Authority Terminal. Those are all currently funded.
And on 5, this board cannot take separate action to defer the obligation on the loan of $96,200 payment. We cannot take a separate action today.
I believe we
or
would
does it
have
be
to
agendized?
agendize that.
You have to
and
agendize
discuss that.
That was the reason I'd asked for a separate meeting. Okay, we have 7. Position 7.
In the amount of 14.5.
14.5.
Okay.
Do we have a second on that?
We don't
Chairman?
yet.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, a second. Let's discussion.
I'd like to make a separate motion. I would like to move that we use the lien payments in a revolving fund like was outlined in our packet, so that we don't have to worry about funding, because it will just be there.
I agree. I second that motion.
Because there was no money put in for liens, is that correct, Heidi, if I remember right in what I read? So any of those funds would, so there's no
I think
funding
Supervisor
followed.
Cowan seconded
I
your
second
motion.
that. I liked Heidi's report, and it made sense to me to just set up that revolving fund.
And that did make a lot of sense to me too. It wouldn't necessarily impact our general fund, but it would allow a funding source through this revolving program to where these liens would roll in and help Dominic do what he needs to do out there, which I think we're all extremely supportive of and really want to see that commitment towards. Public comment on this item.
So I don't know that it has to go on a particular number, Jay, in this case.
In the case of the revolving fund, no, it wouldn't be, because it's not currently a budgeted number. It would be at the, basically the whim of a lien being repaid. So if my understanding of that commitment would be that if the lien repayment came in, then it could be transferred in to be allowed for the public service of abatement or another line.
And my understanding is we put the 14 in, and we're bringing in about 14 right now. That in itself will double it. Is that correct, Heidi? Is that my assumption?
Pretty close.
Yeah. I mean, trying to get to the same goal with where Mr. Gitlin is going.
Yes, I mean, the funds are, I mean, the lien repayments are very infrequent, I mean, we don't know when they're going to come in,
Correct.
but.
Yeah, I was just looking at the averages over the
ideally,
years.
But it would establish
Yeah.
a fund.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, so I would, if that is your preference, I would prefer that the 14.5 or whatever is remaining for this fiscal year be transferred over into the revolving funds, so we would be able to roll it over,
We can do that at the next meeting.
along
I
with
imagine.
any lien repayments
Right.
that we were to receive this fiscal year.
And then we would be allowed to also roll forward the lien
Yes.
amounts. So
Yes.
those amounts would stay
Yes.
there until they're used up.
Thank you.
Don't go, Heidi. I'd like to ask you a question on this before we vote on this. This is all money on the come, this lien release, and there's no timetable on it.
No.
And you've been, and I'm not casting any aspersions on your department, the money has been slow to come. So the reality is it's not going to come in any kind of a reasonable way to address the issues that we currently cannot address at this time because you don't have the funding. So this lien on Supervisor Hemingson's motion is money that you might get, and I say might, but it's not, there's nothing guaranteed, and I think it is pointless because it's not going to address the problem. It's going to kick it down the road. If you're successful, great, but so far there have been mixed results on that.
It would certainly place us in a better position than we are now.
Well, how?
We would be able to roll over the $14,500.
Which you have.
And if we did receive a lien payment, we would be able to apply that toward professional services.
Okay, if the
I mean, it's
condition
not
were-
bringing any new money, so to speak, as you suggested, but it would at least place us in a better position than we are
So
today.
what's the reality? Let's just talk the reality of the if, the conditional use, so the word if this happens, this will happen. Great. That hasn't happened. Excuse me, Ms. Kunsel, has that happened on any kind of consistent basis where it can be budgeted?
You're asking if we...
Yeah, I'm asking you if that conditional use on these lien releases, what kind of money is coming in that actually is a net dollars?
It really depends on the cycle, whether or not, where a property
Mm-hmm.
falls in as far as defaulting and then being sold at auction. I mean, for example, last year there was no auction, if I recall correctly, so there wouldn't have been an opportunity for money to return to us through tax auction sales. I mean, in 2018, I believe that we have a couple of properties that, unless they are paid off, which would still be a win for us because they would pay off the amount that of their lien repayment. I think we have a couple that may come in this year.
So
This fiscal
2017
year.
was $0 on liens. In 2018, you have a couple.
Well, I
Maybe.
believe in 2016-17, we did have a lien repayment. I would have to go back and check. But I think, I mean, if your point is that it's uncertain, yes, absolutely. We don't know. But from a staff standpoint, if we were, anything is more than we're being able to retain presently.
Supervisor Kelly.
When I looked at her numbers, I saw about the same amount come back in. I get it that it's not a budgeted amount and a set amount at a set time, but when you look at year to year to year, I believe over the last few years, you've gotten an average of around $14,000 to $15,000. And you'll get the opportunity to hold on to that 14 that we're giving you now and roll it over versus it coming back, correct? So that's another positive. So in the long swing, maybe right up front, you don't have it, but as it goes on and builds, I think it's very beneficial to the department. I think it's a conversation we had before I even became a supervisor, is what's to solve? And the revolving account is what had come up at that time.
Supervisor Berkowitz.
So it sounds like what we have is an illusion of new money when there's no guarantee of anything at all. In fact, we could have less money, correct?
Supervisor Hemmingson.
No, that was one thing I built into my board report, that in no case I would want less than $14,500 allocated for professional services. I mean, obviously, I would love to have more money if we could find it elsewhere. However, as I pointed out, I have not been able to find it within my own department, so we would have to look elsewhere.
Thank you.
Well, I think what I'm talking about is new money, all right? There is no guarantee. It's all an illusion unless it comes through.
Yeah.
Supervisor Hamilton.
You know, I am totally confused. The whole premise behind this revolving fund was that code enforcement was supposed to be a moneymaker, and this is how it would be a moneymaker. Now, all of a sudden, it's an illusion. I'm totally lost. Over the past 11 years, we got an average of $13,900 and some dollars, if I remember right from the report. That, to me, is pretty sure. I mean, we can expect over an average of about $14,000 a year. But now it's an illusion. Originally, it was supposed to be a moneymaker. So I don't know. I don't know where we
Thank
want
you,
to go.
Supervisor.
I think what I'm talking about when I say illusion is of new money over and above the 14 or
Thank you for that
13,000.
clarification. Public comment, please. No? Okay, here we go. Please state your name for the...
My name's Greg Bianchi. I've been coming...
Please state your name for the...
Greg and Bianchi. Greg Bianchi. Got
Thank you.
that? All right. I come here to address all of you, including the people out here. I'm a homeowner in this freaking county, and I tell you what, I'm really appalled by all of you. You're here representing the people of this community. You've been duly elected to follow what we want you to do for us, not what you guys opinionate yourselves to do for whoever you want to. Now, you guys got to get it together. You either have to go back in private session and redo this budget so that everybody who is concerned gets what they need to get. We don't rubber stamp anything in this community anymore. I don't want to stand here before you and have to say that. You guys were duly elected, and you need to fucking get to it. Pardon that F word, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. But I am really upset by this board. You guys need to get it together. I'm tired of hearing everybody comes in and says, we can't find the funds. Well, you know what? You got a ghost fund over there of $96,000. Nobody can guarantee it. Well, if we gave that guy some money over there, maybe he could go ahead and do his code enforcement and maybe get some more money. You want to invest in that? Do it. Clean up our community. Get that code enforcement guy the opportunity to do what he needs to do. Get that money, get this place cleaned up. You don't want to do that, then you all need to go home and start over again. Maybe we need a new election. But I think what happens is there's nobody wants to run. Nobody wants to sit where you're sitting. I want to sit where you're sitting, but I have to vacate one of you. And I have to move into your county to do so. If I could run against you and succeed, you know what? I would run anyway just to piss you off. Okay? So you people need to grow up. You're acting like a bunch of little kids. Okay? Stop chewing your gum and your candy and everything, and reach out to the community and do something for us, for a change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Linda Satter, 5th District. Listen, you know what? The bottom line is this. If you went and got in debt for that terminal's not going to do anything. I'll tell you right now, I got an airline ticket out of Medford for $1,400 to Greece. It cost $5,600 out of here. You guys are you're spending your money in the wrong places, and now we're all suffering because you don't have money for what we need it for. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment on this item, specific to code enforcement. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Any further discussion from the board? Great. Okay, we have 2 motions on the table. I think we'll take the motion number 2 first by policy. Kylie, do you have enough
Please read it again.
to go on there?
For Supervisor Hemmingson's motion, is this prioritizing it in a certain list, or is this just
No,
to
it's not
refer to? Okay.
We wouldn't need to prioritize it in
Okay.
a certain list. It would just be to create
The lien
a
payments in a
revolving-
revolving fund?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
No, wait. Supervisor Berkowitz needs
Read the motion
clarity.
again, please.
To use the lien payments for code enforcement in a revolving fund.
along with the 14,005 that we already give them, and that's to be rolled over.
And that was seconded by Supervisor Cowan.
Okay. Supervisor Gitlin.
No.
Supervisor Berkowitz.
No.
Supervisor Cowan.
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yes.
Chair Howard.
And yes. All right. The third item, county non-maintained roads. How do you want to approach this?
All right, let me go ahead and move this for a $5,000 for each supervisorial district to maintain non-county maintained roads, or as a maintenance for non-county maintained roads, $5,000 for each district.
Second.
Could you put it in a position to look at that?
Yes, that would be for position number 5.
So if you put that in 5, we're moving the airport down, we're moving Klamath down. Is that what you're trying to do? I just want to be clear. Because right now, Klamath is the 6th position as on this. If you put this in 5,
You're absolutely right. All right, you're absolutely right. So I'm going to go and put this in position number 7. This is let me get this clarified as which positions we're at right now, because we had so many changes. So CAO, can you give me 3 through whatever we have at this point?
Contingency is number 3 at $100,000. Capital improvements is number 4 at $100,000. The airport BACRA repayment is at 96.9, and number 6 would be Klamath at 30. At number 7 position would be your motion, which I believe you're making now, which would be for a commitment of $5,000 per district, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Right.
we brought up all the law, just want to point out, we have nothing in District 1. Do you want to really separate it up? I mean, I'm all for what you're saying, and I want to come up with a solution, but we saw by Heidi's report that the districts just aren't equal. So to sit and delegate a certain amount equal to all districts, I wouldn't be for. An amount just in general at the discretion at the professionals would be, in my opinion, a better way approach of this.
Well, I think you may have a point there. So we could say 25,000 for all 5 districts, with at the discretion of the administration, but with preference given to equalize them. All right, equalize the payments as much as feasible possible.
Supervisor Berkowitz, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
What I think we want to create is a road contingency fund for non-maintained roads. That's what I think we're trying to do here. A road contingency fund at the discretion of a road superintendent, so that when their problem comes up on a non-county maintained road, and I'm going to put / private road, because folks live on those and they're impacted. So it would be inclusive of just not non-county. Private road too, and again, Ms. Kunsel, I refer to streets that are currently within our greater city area, county area, that are with homes on them. Brevis, Birchall Place, Napa and District 2, they're streets, but they may not be in your strict definition of a non-maintained county road. So it's got to be some flexibility in the roads department in addressing this problem. And if you're using the figure of $25,000, I would actually recommend that you change your motion to have the setup of a roads contingency fund, emergency roads contingency fund, to address these roads in non-maintained areas within Delaware County. And that's at the discretion of our road superintendent as per need. We've got to help folks. We've got to address the issue where we're helping folks. If we kick this down the road, you didn't spell it out the right way, it doesn't help these folks, and they continue to suffer. And they're poor people, and they can't afford to do it themselves. So if you'll allow me to make that motion for you, sir, instead of your
Sure.
motion, then I'll ask for a second.
And I'll second.
Can I have county council weigh in on private roads? Because I don't believe we can touch
These aren't
private roads.
roads, these are county roads.
He said private.
Do you want to clarify that? 'Cause these are-
Well, you know, again, the definition of a private road, where there's, I'm going to use Birchall Place. Is that a private road, Ms. Kunsel? Is Birchall Place a private road?
Yes, it's a private
Is Brevis a
road.
private road?
Yes.
Well, then we're not helping these folks. We're not helping them.
One of the things that I think you need to be aware of is the expenditure of public money on private land is a whole different discussion and probably not going to be allowed.
Yeah.
So clarify that, please, Supervisor Berkowitz.
Mr. Gitlin, maybe
I'll
we
withdraw
could-
I'll withdraw that as a motion. Go ahead,
No,
Supervisor.
go ahead and have the same motion, just drop private roads.
Okay.
Contingency
A
fund,
roads contingency fund set up at the discretion of this board, instructing the road superintendent to address non-maintained county roads in Delaware County.
and I second that.
Okay, correct. In position 7. We have a motion and a second on the table. Let's open it up for public discussion. You're certainly welcome to approach, but you are not the public, just to clarify.
I believe that the priorities for those roads need to come from the Board of Supervisors. I don't know about having our road superintendent establish that. Perhaps it's something, now that you have a list of roads, and you obviously from your constituents, you know where there are issues, that perhaps at a public session, we could bring forward a list and kind of give you an idea of, you could give us the priorities, we could come back, give estimates, and then set it aside that way. And then
I'll amend the motion.
And I'll second the
And the
motion.
amending of the motion includes at the Board of Supervisors' discretion, instead of the road superintendent or CDD department.
Kylie, are you capturing this, or, because it's challenging? Let's just, so Kylie's clear, the motion is specifically to fund in the amount of $25,000 county non-maintained roads in a roads contingency fund that would be at the discretion of the Board of Supervisors. In position 7.
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'm amazed I even got that correct. All right. Did I open up public comment on this?
Did, but
It's
I
a new
didn't see
motion,
anyone
so
come.
let's go ahead and open it up again. All right, we'll bring it back to the board. Further discussion from the board? Okay, very good. Kylie, please poll the vote.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. CAO Serena, you have a puzzled look on your face.
No, I don't. No, I appreciate as painful as this has been going through all of this, this is the action of the board in front of the public. And I appreciate you giving that direction back to myself as well as the other staff that's sitting here that, you know, it has to deal with this as it comes forward. It's a difficult process. I just wanted to remind you that today we're asking that we open the public hearing to consider this recommended budget, and we'll have 14 days, but if we could go back to that as the action of the board, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Council, is there any other action under this item that we should take before moving on?
I'd like one additional comment before council speaks, Mr. Chairman.
Please, Supervisor.
And Jay, I'm going to address you on this, and I'm going to ask you to be the hero of the day in somehow finding the funds in our budget. And I understand you are balanced now to put a magnifying glass on these areas to see about the priority of increasing the funding beyond, and I believe it was 5. We're funded through 5. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we've got 6, 7, and 8. And I'm asking you in as clear a way as I can in the public to look at this budget again to see if there's a possibility of funding any additional monies on line items that I brought to your attention, to see if there's a possibility of including up to 8.
Certainly, we have 14 days, and there can be changes between now and that final budget. And I won't be the hero. The auditor controller will be the hero, because the money will be coming into the county, and then he'll be able to tell me what might be available, and then we'll make those decisions, and I'll make that recommendation. So that's the work that we'll be doing over the next 2 weeks.
Well, you have a challenge before you, CEO and Mr. Shad. Big challenge before you. But thank you. All right, Council, is there anything further that we need to address on this item before moving on?
Yeah, I think, well, you opened 26 as well.
Correct.
So just to, it appears that item is now moot.
That's correct.
So I think you've done public comments, so you should be able to move forward with that item.
Very good. Let's recess for 5 minutes to allow folks to take care of any personal business they need to take care of, and we'll come back to item number 3. We're going to go to our item number 3, which is a 10.
Do
we have to
yeah.
finish number 2 here? Don't we have to
No.
consider-
No.
Yeah.
What?
Right.
On number 2?
Which is to consider and adopt the annual
Chil-
children's budget.
Item number 2.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a motion on that?
Well, if I knew what it was going to be, I would make the motion.
So the recommendation under item number 2 is 1, 2, and 3, which was to open the public hearing, also consider and adopt the children's budget, and also review and discuss the information provided by the Community Development Department, which has happened.
And I'll make that motion,
Second.
now that I know what it is.
We have a motion and a second. Public discussion. Item number 2 on the agenda, our 10:15 timed item. Okay, seeing no public comment, we're going to bring it back to the board. Kylie, please poll the vote.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Okay, item number 3, which is our 10:30 timed item, which is adjourn as the County Board of Supervisors and reconvene as the Board of Equalization and conduct a public hearing for a change of assessment for APN 101-100-03. And first is the applicant in the audience. Okay, the applicant is not in the audience. Kylie, did you send out notice of this hearing?
Yes, I
To
did.
the applicant?
Yes.
And you received no response back?
No.
Okay. Then, based on the applicant not being present here today, we can deny the application for lack of appearance. Okay, we'll move to item number 4, which is adjourn as the Board of Equalization and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors and receive a Recreation Department update from Kelly Bozeman. Kelly, thanks for hanging around.
Hi.
We're all a little delirious right now.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing the Recreation Department the opportunity to present today. My name is Kelsey Bozeman, and I'm the Recreation Program Coordinator for the county, and in this role, I plan and manage multi-generational county recreation programs and athletic leagues. Our primary focus of the Recreation Department is to enrich individuals, families, and the community through the provisions of services, facilities, and programs that can improve the quality of life in Del Norte County. Today, I'm here to present to you the past, present, and future of our Del Norte County Recreation Department. Looking into Del Norte County's past, the community was widely known for its abundance of recreational activities for all. The department thrived with a comprehensive array of recreational activities that were offered at the gymnasium and Pikesfield complex next door. In the 1960s and on, families could sign up for a multitude of enrichment programs, classes, and athletics, such as martial arts, judo, voice lessons, aerobics, roller skating, racquetball, and much, much more. The county even offered recreation leaders at multiple school sites to encourage youth to partake in facilitated recreation programs daily. To paint a bolder picture of the legacy and impact recreation programs have been to Del Norte County, one can generally talk to any long-standing Del Norte County resident and hear a reminiscent story of a program that this particular individual attended. For years, the Recreation Department has provided families and community bonds that have transcended many generations and continue to do so today. Today, the County Recreation Department continues to manage and operate youth and adult recreational programs at these facilities and local school district facilities. We are very proud of these programs as enrollment continues to spike and grow each and every season. To start, I wanted to share some information about our current adult athletics programs. The Recreation Department manages and directs adult softball, basketball, and indoor soccer leagues, as well as many more softball tournaments and special events throughout the year.
In spring 2017, our adult basketball league registered 9 local men's teams and 4 women's teams that played a regular season with a culminating double elimination playoff tournament. Currently, we are getting close to wrapping up our softball program, where we have managed 15 co-ed teams and 9 men's teams for the entirety of the summer. The benefits of participating in these adult athletics are endless. These adult programs provide many benefits to the community and are based on exercise, fun, and good sportsmanship. What is unique about our adult athletics programs is how these programs are a vehicle to help bind our local families and community through shared experiences, creating a hub that focuses on healthy stress relief and bringing individuals together to promote health and well-being. Okay, youth programs. Our youth programs are second to none. Our youth basketball program is more than just a typical youth recreational program. It is a partnership rooted in health and wellness, linking the community members with local businesses in Del Norte County. This program consists of 8 weeks of games and practices where local volunteers and teenage youth manage and coach youth teams for the entirety of the season. The Recreation Department has observed firsthand the strength and character participants develop to continue through continuous involvement in this program. Some of them include self-confidence, problem-solving, strategic thinking, leadership abilities, and a healthy sense of competition. Participants continue to re-enroll in the program yearly with a substantial climb in participation every season. In 2017, the program provided an enriching basketball program to 646 youth in Del Norte County. The youth basketball program has grown 41% in the last 2 seasons alone. Not only are the youth 5 to 12 provided the opportunity to participate, develop skills, and learn the game of basketball, but also 42 local teenage youth aged 15 to 18 are hired and mentored through coaching, refereeing, and scorekeeping opportunities within the program. Through these positions, teenage youth acquire values and social skills that will carry them forward into adulthood as well. The Recreation Department's youth basketball program strives to also empower these older youth to take control of their futures by developing skill sets that promote high self-esteem, learning to manage time, conflict and stressful situation resolution that can be carried into their futures. Program participation fee is only $30 per participant, including their uniform. The low program's fee helped to meet the needs of our income-restricted families in an effort to ensure that all Del Norte County families are afforded the benefit of youth basketball and that it does not exclude them from the inability to pay. The program is subsidized substantially thanks to our local private business and individual sponsorships. In 2017, 34 local businesses and community members contributed $100 or more in order to help establish and maintain the many facets associated with running this program. With lower fees, more families can afford to participate, allowing more youth the accessibility of receiving the many benefits provided by youth basketball. By investing in the program, local businesses recognize the importance and impact of youth basketball and what it does for their local youth. We are also very, very proud to share that in 2017, we had 86 youth participating in basketball from the Klamath region. This was done through the creation of a partnership with the Klamath community and could not have been done without Yurok Councilman Ryan Ray. Ryan was instrumental in the coordination and transportation of these youth. The Yurok tribe and UIHS also paid all of the fees for these Klamath youth, regardless of their tribal status. We are looking forward to our partnership and hope to inspire more youth in the Klamath community as well for the future years. Youth basketball program continues to gain momentum despite economic hardship faced by the Recreation Department on an annual basis. Working with community partners has been a great benefit to our Del Norte County community. Collaboration is extremely important for these programs, and alone, the Recreation Department's youth basketball program would not have the vast opportunity to impact all 691 youth and teenagers within the region. So based on our successful basketball program, the Recreation Department was approached by parents and other community partners who wanted to provide an enriching program during the summer where most youth fall into the summer fade and do not have the accessibility to safe recreational programming while school is out. Building Healthy Communities brought several partners together, including the school district, the Del Norte Child Care Council, NCIDC, the city, library, and many more to gain input and ultimately offer a coordinated summer recreation program. Partners involved in Building Healthy Communities have hosted the Youth Leadership Academy for nearly 100 teens in the summer since 2010. There was a critical help to offer equally positive and healthy opportunity for the youth under 15 as well, and that's where this came in. After a great amount of discussion and input with a collaboration of partners, the Recreation developed our summer day camp program, serving kindergarten to 6th grade. These youth participated in a 6-week half-day summer camp called Kids Camp, also known as Kids Involved during summer, intending to keep the youth busy during these summer months. Housed at the County Recreation Gym, Kids Camp featured daily arts and crafts, enrichment activities, games, sports, and water fun, and utilized many county spaces. Through the process of developing the camp, it became apparent that the framework of this program was a great unexplored opportunity within summer for Del Norte County. The program provided a chance to build skills that promoted resilience and a connection to the community. Many partners stepped up to provide enrichment opportunities to the youth, such as state parks, interpretation, and story time from the Redwood State Parks, information about our local marine life from the Marine Mammal Center, many law enforcement, literacy components from the Wonder Bus, lessons on health from our Health Careers Pathway, and much, much more. Summer camp also engaged our older youth by the creation and development of our Counselors in Training program. This is where the youth involved in Building Healthy Communities Youth Training Academy gained real-world experience to become a positive mentor and coach to our summer camp participants. Counselors in Training assisted in guiding participants through their daily camp activities, and through their direct participation with campers, these counselors in training developed invaluable leadership experience that will encourage and inspire the campers to push the limits of their imaginations, to collaborate, and ignite the spirit of summer camp for many generations to come. Through their experience, they're all eligible to become camp counselors in the following year, which is a paid county position. And thanks to the California Endowment in Building Healthy Communities for a $45,000 grant, this allowed us to achieve our goals to create a summer enrichment program. Kids Camp was highly successful with over 65 youth involved in the program, partaking in all of the organized activities. Families paid only $25 a week, and Kids Camp provided these youth with the opportunity to connect to their surroundings, participate in human-powered activities, and to benefit from personal and primary relationships. We're very happy about that. And I just wanted to go on to our future. Recreation is an essential asset to the Del Norte County community. The Recreation Department holds great responsibility, and not only does our agency provide crucial health and wellness opportunities for the community, but it also provides an outlet for relationship building and social bonds. The Del Norte County Recreation Department will continue to offer these services and hopefully more to current and future community members, just as it has for half a century. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Pretty impressive program. Any public comment?
Hello, I'm Michelle Carrillo. I'm the Initiative Director with Building Healthy Communities. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the county and especially to Kelsey Bozeman for your leadership and partnership in this work. And just to reiterate, Building Healthy Communities is a community-based initiative and it's in its 6th year. We're looking for these sustainable solutions with partnerships with the local people like our county entities to really step up, and this is a leading example of that. We're dedicated to improving how long and how well our residents live in this community. It's about this place, and this is an example of that. We're growing leaders today. Those middle school students, those high school students that got to mentor, those are our leaders that are going to come back to our community. They have those fond memories and they're going to come back and be a part of this community. Those are the experiences I had growing up, and I appreciate Kelsey bringing up the past points. A lot of us in this room have those same memories. So I also want to say that Building Healthy Communities What we heard was from parents, we heard from residents, and we heard from the partners and the nonprofits who said, we want to figure this out, and we were able to provide a space for people to come together and coordinate to do that, and for those partners to go back and actually make this work happen. It's been an amazing impact. This summer alone, there was over almost 250 young people that were engaged in safe, healthy activities this summer through those partnerships that Kelsey listed, NCIDC, the library, the school district, the county. That's amazing. And we want to keep doing better. We want to keep making sure that more of our young people of all ages have those experiences and opportunities. And we have one ask is that in the future that Building Healthy Communities can continue to bring more of the overall youth vision to a future Board of Supervisor meeting to discuss this.
Absolutely. Thank you. Public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Excellent program. Kelsey, thanks for helping to spearhead this on the county side. The endowment and Building Healthy Communities program, thank you for helping to fund it. It was an incredible program with incredible turnout. There's great things happening with recreation in our community, and having these kids involved and off the couch during the summer is definitely a way of the future, I hope, for this community. So thank you again for your participation. We really appreciate it.
Ditto.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 20. Which is approve and authorize the chair to sign and send the attached comment letter related to Congressman Humpton's draft bill known as the Northern California Conservation and Recreation Act as requested by the Natural Resources Committee. Good day, Mr. Hooper.
Good day. Federal legislation. Now we're on to the easy stuff.
It's easy.
So I think basically the entire board is familiar with the legislation that Congressman Huffman's office put forward. This is his draft legislation, which is being referred to as the Northern California Conservation and Recreation Act. It is a discussion draft. It was introduced in August, and the congressman held public workshop meetings here in Crescent City, which I think the majority of the board was able to attend, in Eureka and Weaverville, which I think Supervisor Hemmingson was able to attend, as well as in Ukiah. During the workshops, Congressman Huffman did, I think, make it fairly clear that this is a rough draft, and that he was really interested in hoping to get some feedback from the public and from stakeholders, which is part of the reason why the Natural Resources Committee took it up for discussion. On August 23rd, that discussion did take place with the Natural Resources Goal Committee. Direction was given to staff to look at the bill, provide an analysis to the board, as well as a comment letter providing the input that was solicited from Congressman Huffman. So the bill essentially consists of, I think, 3 principal sections. They have to do with restoration and economic development, recreation, and conservation. We kind of focused the board report and the letter on what that all means for us here in Del Norte County, but I think it's important to also bear in mind that it is the Northern California bill, and it does take into account projects in Mendocino County, Trinity County, Humboldt County, and I believe Siskiyou County. It's clear in the bill, or I should say in the discussion draft, that the principal components that would be of interest to Del Norte County pertain to recreation and conservation. And specifically what that means in terms of the recreational focus of the bill here in Del Norte County would be the establishment of, and I think there may be some debate on the name of this first project, but it's the Bigfoot National Recreation Trail. This is a trail that would start in the Mendocino National Forest, work its way through the public lands, and eventually end up in Crescent City. Again, I don't think he's necessarily married to the name Bigfoot, and there was a little bit of pushback from the group in Crescent City on that. I think it was a little more favorably received in Humboldt County.
I like it.
You like it. That's all that matters. There's also the Elk Camp Ridge Trail, which is a trail that does currently exist here in Del Norte County. It's located above the Gasky Toll Road, and under the current Forest Service designation, it's actually designated as a forest system motorized trail. as I understand the legislation, what it would confer upon the trail would, you can essentially do on it everything that the bill purports to be able to make it be able to do. So that's a bit of a question mark, at least in my mind. And then thirdly, with respect to the recreational component, would be, I think, a real push to look at the feasibility of developing infrastructure within the public lands of Delaware County, specifically for mountain biking. There was a real focus in the draft bill to mountain biking, specifically in Delaware County. That seemed to be a real interest of the congressman in terms of putting forward those opportunities. Moving to the conservation elements of the discussion draft, and perhaps the more concerning of the issues in light of what that could mean for the county, would be the designation of an additional approximately 40,000 acres as wilderness to be folded into the existing Siskiyou wilderness. This would essentially be on the county's kind of eastern border, and these would be in areas like Sanger Peak, Blue Ridge, and the Buck Creek area near the South Fork. The bill would also designate what would potentially be future wilderness. And in reading the bill, it appears that these future wilderness areas would essentially have the same effect of actual wilderness designation in terms of restrictions on mechanized transportation, infrastructure, road infrastructure, and really what the wilderness bill itself intends to kind of discourage is the human influence on these, what's referred to in the bill as untrammeled lands. So again, the designation of these potential future wilderness areas would be subject to those same standards. Again, and looking specifically at the consequences of these conservation efforts here in Delaware County, at least in staff's opinion, when you look at the majority of the areas that we folded into the Siskiyou wilderness, they're really hard to access. They're places that, frankly, not too many people are going to have an issue with getting turned into wilderness because, honestly, so few people ever get to see them. They're really hard to get to. However, there are some concerning elements to the addition of wilderness, specific to what's being referred to as the Ship Mountain Unit. And obviously this would be up in the Ship Mountain lookout area. The addition of wilderness would essentially be between the Ship Mountain Road and the Fox Ridge Road. And if you look at the map, what it kind of effectually does is create an island of wilderness that, again, in staff's thinking about how this area is going to be managed could present future issues. As I said, wilderness areas really aren't supposed to, and they're actually prohibited under the Act from having the obvious influence of human touch upon them. And certainly up in the Ship Mountain area, you've got a system of Forest Service roads, you've got obviously the lookout itself, and you clearly have the influence of humans in that area. And so, at least in our mind, I think it's a fair question to ask as to whether it's an appropriately designated area for wilderness. And what that means in terms of future management, you can look at situations like the Go Road, which was originally excluded from the wilderness designation in California in 1984, and it created the cherry stem. And what that ultimately led to, along with some other compounding factors, was a determination that really the presence of that road was in conflict with the wilderness value that was established in the Siskiyou wilderness. And in my mind, I think it would be a fair question for somebody to ask 15, 20 years down the road, does that same situation exist with these roads, the Ship Mountain Road and the Fox Ridge Road, and frankly, a lot of the Blue Ridge area. Unfortunately, the timing, I think, of this discussion is appropriate. Not necessarily for good reasons, but the area in question, the Blue Ridge area in particular, is being used to combat the encroachment of the Oak Fire, which is part of the Eclipse Complex, into Delaware County across the South Fork of the Smith River. And so would the designation of wilderness contribute to the ability of the forest firefighters in combating that and pushing it back? It's a matter of interpretation, and in my mind, I think it would be a barrier to them being able to get in and operate with mechanized equipment and certainly maintain the lines that are the contingency lines that would be established. But it is something to consider. I think that's it in terms of what's included in the bill for Delaware County. I hope you've all had a chance to at least look at the letter. My hope is that there is criticism, but my hope is it's constructive. Again, he made it clear that he was hoping to get input from the public that would shape what the bill ultimately would look like. But if there's any specific questions, I'm certainly available to work with the board on getting those answered.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper, for that robust summary. Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yeah, Randy, as always, you do an absolute excellent job in the letter. I really would like to have a little more emphasis put on the wildfire situation within the wilderness. You know, I guess I don't really know how to capture that, but you know, this having to deal with the smoke that we've been dealing with for the last few weeks is bad enough. If that area right there were to start moving this way, we would have some real issues. And so I really think that needs to be pointed out. I'm of the opinion that all the recreational activities that he suggested are certainly allowed within the act, the Smith River National Recreation Area Act that's there now. So if you just eliminated the designation of those wilderness areas, I guess kind of opt us out and go ahead and do those improvements that he's talked about which would be allowed, certainly allowed in the Smith River National Recreation area. You know, we're working under a management plan that's 20+ years old. My feeling is they should update the plan that we've got now, not start overlaying things that I really don't think are necessary.
Thank you, Supervisor. Other questions for Mr. Hooper? Okay, let's go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Certainly is a long-winded young man.
For the
Greg Bianchi again.
Thank you.
He sure is a long-winded young man. I commend you on your ability to speak so well, but somewhere along the line, I'm not quite getting what it is you're trying to sell.
Please direct your comments to the board. Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry. So what is it all about again? Can somebody give me a real brief dissertation of what just took place?
This is specifically a discussion about a proposed bill in Congress to create more wilderness in 4 counties, one of them Del Norte, and also to add recreational and economic development opportunities.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to hear that. That was all what he said. I just wanted to get it clarified so I could understand it a little bit better. Thank you for that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and bring it back to the board. It was good to see all the supervisors at this discussion in the county when Congressman Huffman was here. We all had an opportunity to weigh in. I think we did. And my specific questions really revolve around the 1964 Wilderness Act. I think the act itself, Congress needs to reopen. It's to the point where this 50-year-old plus act is no longer a functional tool within our current forest system in the United States. And you could see example after example after example of it every year when forest fire is left to get out of control. Chetco Bar Fire, our own Eclipse Fire, which initially started as a young fire, started in wilderness, and it was not allowed to be put out because of the restrictions under the Wilderness Act. They just left people posted on it and to watch it spread until it became a situation that was out of control. The act needs to be reopened, and I can understand folks wanting to push Congressman Huffman in a direction that would add more wilderness. That's fine. They're certainly willing to do so. Those forces are outside the forces of this community. But there's members here in this community that also support these actions. There are components of the bill that Supervisor Hemmingson has mentioned and also highlighted by Mr. Hooper, the recreational components, economic components that were highlighted in this bill. Great. I wish there was some money to support those because our forest has been duly lacking the funding to help provide those recreational opportunities since the creation of the NRA. It needs to happen. But the inclusion of additional wilderness in Del Norte County, if it's going to be treated like it has the last several decades, which does not allow our force to manage for fire, and allows these conditions that we've been living under for the past month to continue to occur, to me, is not the right situation or direction we need to go in. I know those are firm words, but I think that's the message that I hope to send to Congressman Huffman and to open this discussion up. Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yeah, I would move that we approve and authorize the chair to sign the attached comment letter.
We have a motion on the table.
A second?
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay, Kylie, please pull the vote.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Item number 21, approve and authorize the chair to sign the attached comment letter requesting Senator Feinstein and Harris to support SB 1731, known as the Forest Management Improvement Act of 2017, as requested by the Natural Resources Schools Committee. Mr. Hooper, you're back again.
Back again.
Please
So
try to
I think the previous conversation was actually a very appropriate segue into this conversation, and really it principally has to do with what is responsible and appropriate forest management. And for all the reasons that were just, I think, eloquently articulated by the board, there's a lot of ill effects from what we've seen from forest management over the past, pick the number of years, decades perhaps. And really, when I look at this particular piece of legislation, which is being put forward by a senator out of South Dakota, of all places, it recognizes the issue that we face here in the West. We have millions of acres currently burning, tens of thousands of acres in our backyard, and as Chair Howard just again articulated, if there was a paradigm shift, if there was a shift in thinking and a shift in practice, these wouldn't necessarily be of the magnitude that they are. And so this, I think, is a common sense piece of legislation that really looks at activities that can be conducted, which are currently heavily regulated, that create those barriers to doing what needs to be done to prevent these types of activities from getting out of control, or these types of incidents from getting out of control. Forest thinning, the salvage of dead and dying trees, under the current protocols under the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, there are significant barriers to the federal land managers from getting in and doing that management that they need to do. This would hopefully lower some of those barriers. I think it should be viewed in a bipartisan manner, and that there's provisions in it that would enhance natural resource protection, the creation of new forest habitat, and again, lowering the standard that needs to currently be met, which is challenging if you talk to the Forest Service, you talk to other agency folks, and ever doing anything. So I was hoping that the board would consider this request, to get the letter submitted to our elected state representatives in the U.S. Senate, to get behind it and support it. We'll see what they say.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper.
Sure.
Then I would move to approve and authorize the chair to sign the attached comment letter.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Public comment. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, please pull the vote.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Item number 22, which is review and discuss two letters of complaint received by the Board of Supervisors on August 3rd, 2017 and August 23rd, 2017. And this is in regards to a previous issue that became a much greater issue maybe than it needed to be, but a previous issue before the board, which was the Oxford House. Supervisor Gitlin, I'll let you kick this off, please.
I think not. I think I'll let you discuss it, Mr. Chairman. It was not my choice to hang this laundry out, so I have some comments to make, but
let me go ahead.
It's not my idea to kick this off.
Understood.
It's my idea to clarify discussions, and that's what it is, discussion which you wish to conduct on this board.
And it's not me personally, this is a decision of the board, excluding you at the time, to actually agendize this item. So it wasn't me personally that decided to do this, but it was an action decided by the board to agendize this item. So I'll go ahead and frame this discussion. There was very robust conversation at the time specific to the Oxford House, and actions that were taken by one particular supervisor generated some letters of complaint. Those letters came before the board. It caused a lot of folks distress in this community, and maybe some things that didn't need to take place. It was also generated by the actions of this particular supervisor. The report that went to the county, or the sheriff's department, because they felt the actions of this supervisor were egregious enough to make a report and a complaint to the sheriff's department, besides just this board of supervisors. In discussion with the board, we felt the best course of action to approach this was to allow the supervisor in question, which is Supervisor Gitland, to have a discussion in public to show that we as a board are transparent about how we're going to take action, and allow that supervisor, if he's willing to do so, apologize for maybe those actions. And that's where we left the discussion, to come before the community and let the community have a voice. And so the community is going to be allowed to have a voice in this situation. The board will have a voice in this situation, and the supervisor can choose to take whatever direction he would like to take at this time. And that's the discussion as it's currently framed. Supervisor Gitland.
I haven't been visited by the sheriff. I haven't been arrested. I haven't been convicted. I was out doing my job. Now, you've all seen the letters, and if you haven't, this kind of reminds me of a kind of a witch hunt. I got an item late in the agenda about funding for a safe and sober house in my district, and I got some calls from folks. I didn't know anything about it. So I did some due diligence, and I called Mr. McVeigh, the programs manager, on the Friday afternoon relative to the Tuesday agenda item, and didn't receive a phone call back Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. Local number. Telephone number was local. The address was already published. You all know it was on Loft Street. So I drove over there. I knocked on the door, and I asked for Mr. McVeigh. Who are you? Door opened. Who are you? May I help you? And I showed him my business card. A business card. Well, he's not here. Okay. I was invited in to the house at 230 Loft, and I was put on the phone with Mr. McVeigh, and we spoke. And I asked him a lot of questions about the Oxford House and the funding on this, and do you need the funding, and did you seek the funding? No, we didn't seek the funding. It was offered to us. Well, do you have funding of your other houses? No. Bakersfield, he referred to me for the property in Bakersfield. No, we don't have funding on there. So we agreed to meet face to face at the Loft House later, not that day. But I want to tell everyone here that I unequivocally deny the allegations and statements set forth in letter number 1. My visit was a courteous one, and it was polite, and that's who I am. It's not my nature to barge in and throw my weight around. I don't do things like that, and have never done things like that. 4 words I use are please, thank you, you're welcome, and excuse me. In every sentence, I have the opportunity to use that. Needless to say, I voted no on the original vote, which was the following Tuesday, because I didn't have enough information on this. But it wasn't a quorum vote. It was 2-1. So one of the supervisors here, Supervisor Cowan, recused herself. Normally, we have a county code manual, which you have to give a reason, but you didn't. There was no reason given. She recused herself, and normally you exit the room when you recuse yourself. Supervisor Cowan didn't either. She stayed in the room and continued to opine until I reminded the chairman that this was a conversation that Supervisor Cowan would have to exclude herself from and leave the room, but that did not happen. So ultimately, I did meet with Mr. McVeigh after I voted no, and I reconsidered my vote. He made sense. He showed me the books. He showed me the expenses. I had a very pleasant meeting with all of the girls that were there, the women. and I got information that I didn't get prior to my able to vote. So I'm out there doing my due diligence. I'm doing my job as a supervisor based on what my constituents have asked me to do. And I was part of a 5-0 vote to vote for what was then amended down to $26,000 in funding. Letter number 2 from property owner Mrs. Hopkins is self-serving and without any personal knowledge of the facts of event in question. She's obviously, Mrs. Hopkins is benefiting from $4,000 a month county assistance, actually it's state assistance approved by the county, of which $2,000 goes directly to her. So her comments to me are not valid. She has interest though. And I continue to remain concerned about the spending of taxpayer funds for safe and sober houses in this particular case, but I want to remind everyone, I did vote for it. And I recognize the greater good to the community provided by this outreach to those afflicted with alcohol and drug addiction. As for me going to neighbors' homes and asking about, do you approve of this? Do you think I should do this? This outreach, whether I make a phone call to someone, an email, someone contacts me, or yes, even knocking on your door. Many of you know I do that. It's an outreach. And it's one in which I don't exclude people from that. But after reflecting on this, as I do offer an apology, that of any of my efforts to educate myself on this public funding may have upset some people. I apologize for that. But I was asked to make this decision in very quick order. And it was neither my intent nor purpose to conduct myself in any other manner except a professional manner as the duly elected public servant representing District 1 in Delaware County. And if that extension has offended anyone, I offer an apology. That's my statement.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'd like to open it up for any public comment at this time.
Linda Sutter, 5th District. First and foremost, I take responsibility for implying that the Oxford House was a state-funded whorehouse. I did that out of sensationalism of a story, and that should not reflect on Mr. Gitlin. That is me, okay? With that said, sometimes we need to leave sleeping dogs lie. So should have been the case for this particular item on this agenda. 29-year-old Wendy Parisky, career criminal. She's a felon. Since she was 10 years old, she was entered into the justice system for vandalism, defacement, burglary, theft, larceny, possession of marijuana, jail for violation of probation. And this Friday, she goes back to court for another felony of burglary. And yet we're supporting her with public money. Instead, I guess it's cheaper than putting her in the jailhouse where she belongs. But there's no supervision of this woman. I've got all her records right here. 34-year-old Warren, charged with 5 felony charges. One was a hit and run, felony charge. She's out. She only did 5 months in jail. There's no supervision at this house that she's at. Yet we're using public money to support her. And Miss Kayla Horn, well, you know, there's hope for her. She only did 60 days in jail, and she's a drug addict. And hopefully that the Oxford House will be able to do something for her. For the other repeat offenders described here, they're utilizing the system for free room and board, yet continue to be felons that we support publicly in the form of a house of freedom, which in my opinion they do not deserve. And you believe in protecting the public, because I heard you say it earlier today. Yeah, this is not protecting the public. And as far as crimes, since we're on the subject, I understand Miss Lori Cowan is got a case up in Sacramento this month for the fair, yes, I have it right here, Miss Cowan, Fair Political Practices Commission. You either didn't, oh yeah, failed to disclose her business positions as a manager of North Coast Ocean and Sports and Grill, and as a realtor of Northwoods Realty and spousal income. And you either didn't do your due diligence in seeking out how to fill out your forms because you don't understand them, or you intentionally chose not to disclose the information thinking you would get away with it. Either way, it demonstrates your lack of integrity. So if we're going to be out here flogging Mr. Giltland for ethical conduct, I think we need to flog Ms. Cowan too. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment.
Good afternoon, Wesley Nunn, county resident. So if I get this right, I read the letters of complaint. As I understand it, Roger knocked, wanted in to look around, explained why, was told that no one was in charge, and asked for rules and regulations. Roger was told no one was in charge, although that violates the Oxford House Corporation rule that requires officers run the household. The letter also alleges undue stress and loss of privacy and anonymity. The second letter alleges undue stress by Roger arriving without an appointment or calling ahead. The same letter alleges slander. The letter goes to the property and refers to it as a private residence and threatens to prosecute Roger for trespass if he comes around again. That's the gist of it as I understand it. These complaints are completely invalidated by the fact that the residents have converted their residence into a business, a place of business engaging in commerce for profit. Okay, so this is a place of business. I'm not going to go into what hours would be okay to approach that business, whether it's okay to ask to go in, anything like that. But boy, I tell you, privacy, anonymity, all those things are out the window when they decided to go into business. And business is defined under legal dictionaries as the sale of service for profit. And there's others, but that's probably the most concise I've found. So, the second letter goes on to ask Roger why he did not approach other clean and sober houses in the district under other programs. The answer is pretty simple to me. The other clean and sober houses require the residents pay rent. Check with HASP. They pay rent or they don't get to stay. So, turning the residents into a profit, business for profit, the HASP people who pay rent are probably entitled to some privacy. When you go into business and work that business out of that residence, and the place of business is 230 East Loft, changes everything, okay? All right? And I see a copy of the letter went to California Fair Political Practices Commission. I think the Taxpayers Association will be sending a letter explaining some of these circumstances since they were not explained in the complaints. And then as the last matter, I was here a little over a month ago. I expressed concern over the contract itself. I said an individual would only be Gene McVeigh. I was told mistakenly, and it's an easy mistake, that it could include a corporation entity or something like that. That's incorrect. I researched it at length, and I am a very good legal researcher.
Thank you.
What I found is person and individual are distinct. They are absolutely not the same. Person can be a corporation. It can be any other kind of entity.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, over?
Yes.
Am I over 3?
Appreciate your
Okay.
time.
So that invalidates the contract, as I said last month.
Thank you.
Donna Westfall, I live in District Number 1. These complaints really disturb me on so many different levels, starting first with the owner of the property, Donna Hopkins, who wants Gitland to apologize for what? Doing your job? The job I asked you to do? I wanted to know about this Oxford House scheme, and why they needed public monies. He went in, he asked questions, he got answers, albeit it took some time to get most of the answers, and there are still some outstanding questions which we can't seem to get answers to. But first, let's go over Mrs. Hopkins' complaint and start with anonymity. If you look at the other complaint letter signed by the residents, 5 residents of Oxford House, Sequoia, and a public document, because you put it right out there on the agenda, it seems to me that they did not expect nor request anonymity. So the subject of anonymity needs to be filed in the paper shredder because there exists a dichotomy. As to the matter of going into private residence, it's not a private residence any longer. It is now reclassified tantamount to another living environment because they're receiving public funds. So let's 86 that part of the complaint. And apologize. Gitlin owes no one any apology. Matter of fact, I think we owe him and us, the taxpayers, an apology for continuing to make a big deal out of this. After all, they got $26,000 for the year and a 5-0 vote, whereas our local tax association doesn't believe they are entitled to a cent. Now, as to the unanswered questions, is it a secret about exactly who drew up the contract? Because I can't get an answer and no one will own up to it. And if it involves fraud against the public, then I think it is justified in finding out exactly who wrote up this contract. So consider this public comment as part of the public record, as well as a request for information on the Freedom of Information Act. I expect to be told who wrote the contract. I already checked with Heather Snow, Jean McVeigh, and Elizabeth Cable. None of them wrote the contract. And who picked the original 10 residents, and what was their criteria? You see, I didn't put a gun to anybody's head, any of those residents, to abuse alcohol or drugs or commit crimes. So I don't think my tax dollars should be spent on them to clean up their lives. And as far as the FPPC complaint that Hopkins sent to about this, Linda already addressed the complaint about Lori Cowan having a violation. And I'm curious to know, Lori, when you waived those papers at the previous meeting stating that you could vote on the issue because you weren't in conflict of interest, could you please produce the written confirmation, because I never received anything from the FPPC. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment? Seeing no further public comment, bring it back to the board. Got some things to consider here, board. Not sure what direction you'd like to go in. Supervisor Gitlin has offered an apology. The public has weighed in. Supervisor Cowan.
I just think some things were stated just now that were very untrue. Mr. Gitlin portrays that he nicely went up there, and that's not what happened. I know the girls aren't here to defend themselves, but I don't blame them, you know. After what has happened, they just want to move forward with their lives. But myself, along with Heather Snow, had a meeting with them, and I know how upset they were. I know that they went to the police department. And his portrayal is just a joke. That's not what happened. And people need to understand, it's not about, he keeps saying he's doing his job. It's the way he did his job. When he goes out there, he is a reflection of all of us. We are a board, an entity of one. When he does something and acts that way, that is not okay. It's a reflection on all of us. And that's what this is about, is the way he acted. And when we get complaints, we need to talk about it. And I personally asked him to apologize, and he refused. He doesn't think he did anything wrong. He keeps saying that. And I believe he has done something wrong.
Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yeah, I certainly agree that he was out of line. I have yet to figure out what the goal could be when you're trying to find out information on a contract. That's something that that I think should have been discussed with Ms. Snow or Mr. McVeigh, but not going into a family residence, which I understand is the way this is put together, and that's the way they can have the number of people that they do. is that it's a family residence. So you are entitled to privacy and not have someone knock on your door and want to know what's going on. To what end? To what purpose? What are those people possibly going to know that is going to change the mind? It's amazing to me, had absolutely no issue with the male counterpart to this whole thing, didn't go knocking on their door. And is that just because it wasn't in his district? Steele County funds, same type of deal. So it's very concerning to me in the way that this was done and what he thinks his job is, or what maybe even some of the public thinks his job is. If the public thinks that he should have the authority to be like the sheriff, then it's certainly a different perception than I've got. But there's no question in my mind what he did was not appropriate behavior for a supervisor.
I want to make one more clarification too. It is not a business. They do pay rent. No, I'm not. It is not a business. It is a private residence, and they do pay rent. I just also want to clarify that.
Excuse me, it's board discussion. Supervisor Berkowitz?
Well, I see no reason for me to take part in this verbal flogging of a fellow supervisor. You can just count me out of any further participation in this discussion.
Thank you. So it brings it back to me, and this has been difficult to watch unfold within our community. And there's a certain level of judgment that's bestowed on us when we're elected to respond to the community, and a certain level of judgment when we go out and do our jobs as electeds. Supervisor Gitlin clearly feels he was doing his job in respect of researching this item. That's clear from his comments and from his supporters here today. However, the letters that we received were fairly clear on how the other side of this party not only felt about the actions that were taken, it's completely contrary to the story that was disclosed to you just now by Supervisor Gitlin, to the point where those individuals felt strong enough to make a report to the sheriff. That is problematic for us. As Supervisor Cowan stated, it's a reflection on this entire board. The actions that were taken after that meeting with online blogs and postings were absolutely out of control. Absolutely out of control, and raked these young ladies through the coals. They didn't need to happen. It just didn't need to happen. Their lives were put out there for everybody to see, and allowed for a conversation to take place in this community that didn't need to take place. This is something that this board has continued to approve annually. There could have been ways, as suggested by Supervisor Hemmingson, for this to be done, and the confidentiality that's created with these agreements to continue, but it wasn't. And I don't know how best to proceed from here. My hope is that the supervisor would have taken action on his own, corrective action, some form of mitigation, as part of this. How we proceed from here, I guess the board will continue to have that discussion if they feel it's necessary. But for now, I think we've discussed this to a point. The supervisor has apologized, and we'll move on, unless the board feels otherwise. And we'll move on. Again, I want to apologize on behalf of this board to those that were affected in our community, and in particular, those that were affected in the Oxford House. I want to go on record to say I hope this never happens to you again, as it was a sad moment, I believe, for this board. We'll move to item number 23. Authorize the temporary closure of County Road 305, also referred to as Low Divide Road or Wilmer Road, from its intersection with the Gasky Mountain Road to the Oregon state line from September 12, 2017, until notified by the U.S. Forest Service that the closure is no longer needed for fire suppression purposes as requested by the Director of Community Development. Ms. Kunstl.
Good afternoon. Yes, we were approached by the U.S. Forest Service last week regarding the desire to close Low Divide Road from Oregon Mountain Road and Rowdy Creek Road to the Oregon border in order for either their federal workforce or contractors hired by them to come in and clean brush along the roadway and snags, et cetera, in preparation of creating a contingency line in the event that the fire moves that direction. So we put together this sort of last-minute board report requesting authorization from your board to close the road until such time that they are able to do the business that they need to do and get in and out, and then we can reopen it.
Thank you.
Supervisor
Hamilton.
I would move to approve the temporary closure of County Road 305.
We have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Public comment. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, please pull the vote.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Consider item number 24, which is miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pertinent to the County of Del Norte. Authorize the chair to sign and approve any letters with respect to matters on before state and federal government type issues.
No further letters other than what's on here. Update on AB 1250.
Yep.
People are still fighting against it. And
We are.
Legislation and suspension is being discussed. We don't know which is going to actually come forward at this point, but no letters today.
Thank you. Item number 25, which is review and discuss the information provided by the Community Development Department staff regarding the draft list of local streets and roads projects for future fiscal years. How long do you see this going, Ms. Kunstl?
You mean the funding?
This discussion.
Oh, no. Well, I think this was, we had a concentration of roads for this current year in the Fort Dick area, and Supervisor Berkowitz, I believe, wanted to know exactly where we were headed in future years. So we got together and we put when I say got together, that'd be Road Superintendent Jeff Daniels and myself, and we put together sort of an idea for the next 4 fiscal years. Obviously, this is just a draft, and we will make it a point to come to the board well in advance of whatever the deadline is for these lists to be adopted in order for you to provide input. But any type of feedback that you have today, we'd love to hear, as always. But this is pretty much what this is about. On your next agenda, there will be a resolution that will need to be adopted to incorporate the the fiscal year 17-18 list into the final county budget in order for us to send that to the California Transportation Commission, which will then allow the state controller's office to send the money at such time that it starts rolling in back to the county.
Thank you. Questions for questions for Director Kunstl? Okay, public comment. Guess we're all getting tired. We'll bring it back to the board. Discussion from the board. Okay, there's no action to be taken. We did item number 26, so that brings us to item number 27, which is receive board reports. Ms. Cowan, go ahead. Please kick us off.
It's been a couple busy weeks. I had a meeting with some of the local veterans. We spoke about staging areas and potentially of being in areas, unconventional areas, to help the people that are out there. They've come up with a lot of different areas, and we keep working on it and keep having meetings. Had a meeting with County Council regarding Sutter Coast. I spoke at the Republicans Women's Luncheon and gave an update of all the different boards and committees that I sit on. I think there's about 13 that we've discussed, along with cannabis. I attended the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meeting, and as we approved earlier, that's where we appointed Mr. Finnegan to come on to fill the vacant seat. We had 2 applicants. He was the most qualified. We'll also be looking at new carriers soon and the applications that they'll be submitting. We had the chamber mixer at North Coast Ocean Sports and Grill. It was a great turnout. I attended the Republicans Farm Fresh Dinner where the keynote speaker was out of Huntington Beach, Travis Allen. Attended board prep meeting with CEO Serena and Supervisor Berkowitz. Had a meeting with Hadi, Dominic, Sheriff Apperson, Alan, and talked about, I was getting calls on overnight camping on our beaches and in my district. So we had a little meeting on that, and I will be hoping to bring it back to the board so we can discuss it as a board and options of how we can take care of that. That was it. On a more personal note, I want to express my deepest sympathy to the Gaddy family. They're a family that were been here for a long time, and Fran and Gary lost their son yesterday. So I can't imagine what she's going through, but I hope to keep and ask everybody to keep the Gaddy family in their thoughts and prayers. Thanks.
Supervisor Berkowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the last day of August, I was privileged to attend Barbara Drew's retirement party. Thought it was great, and she will be missed. On Saturday, September 5th, Mr. Gitlin and I attended the Labor Day barbecue at Klamath. It was a sold-out event. We met a lot of friendly folks from in and out of the area. On the 5th, I was given a very informative tour of the Rumiano's cheese plant. This local private business employs over 40 people at a very good wage, and many stay for 20 and 30 years. The tour emphasized every part of the milk product is used, from making cheese to whey to baby formula and a dozen other products. That tour lasted over 2 hours. Unbelievable information. I recommend it for every member of the Board of Supervisors, and Joby Rumiano would love to see you there. When our Washington, D.C. lobbyist was here last, he stressed one thing that board members need to, and that is to be back in Washington, D.C. so that our issues are heard. Issues like funding last chance grade may require commitment over $1 billion, EAS, dredging of the harbor, all of these kinds of things. So on my trip that will be starting on the 18th and going through the 23rd, I've already talked with Vanskoya, a number of people, and all of these meetings are being set in progress so that we'll be able to discuss the priority items for this board and other boards in Del Norte County. So I've been working with a lot of other contacts to make sure that this trip is a success. And also, by the way, I'll be attending the North Coast Broadband Consortium Thursday, Friday, somewhere around in there. There's so many places I'll be going. So that's it, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Hamilton.
Yes, thank you. I'll go through this quickly. We've been here a long time. Attended the cannabis workshop, had a tri-agency meeting, Natural Resource Goal Committee meeting, had a NORTEC meeting in Chico, had a conference call with Greg Burns regarding executive orders. As I mentioned earlier, I went to Klamath and met with Hannah Honer from Trees of Mystery. I can't say enough about her. She's quite a gal.
Father's daughter.
Yeah, and actually her father was there. I hadn't seen John for a while, so I got to visit with him, as well as Charlie Helms from the harbor. Attended Barbara Drew's retirement little get-together, had a Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meeting, went to the Chamber Mixer, had another Natural Resources Goal Committee meeting having to do with the Yurok land legislation. And over the weekend, I attended Franklin and Victoria Dickey's 50th wedding anniversary, and I was very saddened to learn the passing of Elizabeth Burroughs. She was a standout at our local transportation commission meetings. She knitted my grandkids' slippers. She was quite a gal, and she'll be missed.
She will be missed. Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Gittler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we are all very aware, the Chetco fire has dominated our local landscape these past several weeks. So I found myself volunteering at what was then once known as the Ship Ashore Resort. Now it's owned by the Tolowadini Nation, and volunteering and helping people resituate from Brookings Harbor and getting them situated in the park there for a number of days. And RVs, trailers, fifth wheels, and while the fire surrounded us at that time, it was quite an ordeal for those folks. I attended a series of updates of the Chetco Barn eclipse fires conducted by the Office of Emergency Services at the Washington Firehouse. Attended the last cannabis workshop, and well, as you know, we'll have another one tonight at 5:30, all in an effort to reduce the number of options that this board will be tasked with adopting or not adopting, having to do with the implementation of the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, which will effectuate in January of 2018. Met with the city of Crescent City staff concerning constituents' calls to me regarding sidewalk is on the west side of Cooper, known as Graveyard Hill. It's kind of a dangerous drop-off there, so we met with the staff there. And also while we're there, couldn't help but notice the incredible amount of trash and blight at the bottom of the riverbed there, and spoke with city staff regarding how we can address this. It's quite foreboding, and apparently the city will be addressing that with Aldercamp staff in a very short period of time. Participated in the MDA car show at the Lucky 7 last Saturday. Met with a number of constituents on various issues with our county, and also attended some activities at Binder Park. That's my report.
Thank you very much. As mentioned, attended the cannabis workshop. Supervisor Hemmingson mentioned also the Natural Resources Committee, where we just discussed the Yurok Tribal Lands Act. Attended tri-agency meeting. Had a meeting with David Lancaster, who is currently an employee with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, who's retiring soon. He helps to manage our elk issues up here. Wanted to really get his thoughts as an outgoing Fish and Wildlife employee on how we could better address these issues with the state, and also follow up on promises that the state has made to visit Delaware County in October with everybody who's currently working on the elk issue, all the way up to the director of Fish and Wildlife Service. Attended a reception for Laura Weens, hosted at the Art Gallery. It was good to have her and Richard back. They were previous editors. Richard was an editor of the Tribune previously, and Laura's an artist, but it was great to see them again. Also attended Barbara Drew's retirement. Had a great event this weekend for CASA. Had a great opportunity to honor two terrific employees, one elected, one is the director, our sheriff, Eric Apperson. It was an honor to recognize you on behalf of CASA for all the work you've done with our children in this community. And it's just not for the past decade. It's probably been much more, like 15 years you've been doing work for the children's community. It must be commended and recognized. Ms. Snow, the honor that was bestowed on you and all the efforts that you've done since you've brought yourself to this community in April 2016 and come on board with the county, and that recognition that was provided also by CASA. It was an honor for me to help give that recognition to you that night. Thank you for being there for the children of our community. Attended last week in Sacramento a meeting of CSAC. Many items were discussed, and we discussed many of those today, including AB 1250, which Jay had mentioned, and in addition, some of the issues around IHSS and negotiations, as you heard during public comment today. Did hear some comments from Scott Kernan, who's the current Secretary of the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitations, and trying to justify the existence of Proposition 47 and 57 and how it affects the state. And I think most of the people in that room disagreed with his analysis at the time. Prop 57 and Prop 47 has clearly affected us, especially in this rural community, and I know our sheriff deals with it every day, especially with the lack of income that was generated by AB 109. So we'll continue to have those discussions and continue to highlight them as they come forward. Met with Jeff Handhill, who's with the Smith River Fire Protection District, about the use permit, which was being considered by the County Planning Department. I was glad to see that the County Planning approved that use permit, and Smith River Fire Protection District is moving forward with the conversion of the old Ray's Marketplace into a fire hall. And it will better serve our community. It's really what the constituents wanted out there. As Supervisor Gitlin mentioned, the Tolowa-Dini Nation have really rolled out the red carpet for our friends and neighbors in Curry County. And I really appreciate his efforts to recognize those folks with the Tolowa up there. They've done an incredible job opening up the old Ship Ashore resort to people that have fled a fire that really didn't need to happen. Also had some discussions with Dan Harrison over some fence issues. Attended a service for Bobby Lopez, who served as Elk Valley Rancheria Tribal Council from 2000 to 2013. It was sad to see Bobby go. I worked with him very closely when I worked with Elk Valley Rancheria. He was a great addition to the Elk Valley Rancheria Tribal Council, and he'll be missed by all of us. Attended agenda review. And then lastly, I do want to address something that has been brewing here in our community probably since the year 2000. But it's really highlighting its ugliness in District 3 right now, especially in Gasky. And I know many of the supervisors have heard from my constituents about this. And I think staff is doing their best to try to address that, both Community Development Director Kungstol, County Council Elizabeth. But we're having a very difficult time with the mobile home parks in our community, all 60 plus of them. Some are good, some are not so good. Some take advantage of the Mobile Home Act and the code enforcement that the Mobile Home Act restricts housing and community development of the state in order to enforce action on those parks. We gave away that authority in the year 2000. Still trying to answer some of those questions, but a lot of it could have been driven by monetary situations, or a lot of it could have been driven by just a sheer feeling that regulation or code enforcement around mobile homes wasn't necessary for this county to address at the time, but we gave that authority up nonetheless. This has really come home to roost, especially in District 3, and I'm sure other mobile home parks in the districts represented by our other supervisors. And it needs to be addressed. And I'm not entirely clear on how best to address it, but I am very confident that the actions that are being taken right now with our Community Development Director and her staff, specifically Dominic Mello, and also County Council, to help find some solutions on how we could intervene in that Mobile Home Act to try to get some code enforcement and nuisance abatement on some of these problem parks. I'm hoping we could find that solution, because otherwise I'm going to have to address it in another way, which would probably be try to bring this thing back into ownership with county so we can enforce our own codes and not have some state agency doing it for us. And on that note, we'll go ahead and end this conversation. Appreciate your attendance. We'll see you at 5 o'clock if you're so willing when we reconvene. 5:30, sorry. When we reconvene for the cannabis workshop. We'll recess until then. Thank you, everyone.